Chapter 1149. The Best Choice. Chapter 1149. The Best Choice. Chang Yaya was stunned. She looked up at Gu Dafeng in disbelief. After she followed Gu Xiaoxi and rejected Chief Chang's suggestion to hold a banquet, she never thought of wearing the wedding dress again. She did not expect that her eldest aunt would actually take the initiative to mention it. She looked at Gu Xiaoxi, who immediately nodded. I think so too. I also want to hold a banquet and let eldest sister and second brother watch us get married. Without the blessings and witness of his family, the marriage would not be perfect. Chang Yaya pursed her lips and lowered her head slightly. Slowly, the corners of her mouth curled up. Gu Dajiang glanced at Shao Qingyuan again, and the latter's back stiffened. The frequency of his future father-in-law looking at him today was a little high. Unexpectedly, Gu Dajiang said, "There's a good day at the end of August. I've gotten someone to calculate it. It's the best and most suitable day for wedding this year. If we hold a banquet on this day, the new couple will be harmonious for the rest of their lives. I originally wanted Yundong to get married that day, but you're her uncle and have already signed the marriage contract. Why don't you get married first and let them choose another date next year? Next year? Definitely not." Shao Qingyuan hurriedly said. "Why don't we get married together? It'll be lively. Uncle hasn't been in the Xuanhe prefecture for long, and he doesn't know many people. It's a little cold to hold a wedding banquet alone. Why don't we hold a big one? Besides, although Uncle's seniority is high, he's about the same age as me. Wouldn't it be a good thing for two couples to hold the wedding together?" Gu Dajiang looked at him with a faint smile. "It's rare to hear you say so much in one go." He did not retort and seemed to agree. Shao Qingyuan heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but smile. Unexpectedly, when he and Yundong went to Great Rock Village, Uncle Gu had already chosen the date. It was already May, and there were still 3 to 4 months to the end of August. At that time, the weather had already begun to cool down, so it was not very painful. "All right, it's getting late. Go and rest first. We'll talk later." Gu Dajiang hurried everyone to rest. It was already very late, so everyone rested in the small courtyard. They could still stay if they squeezed. Gu Yundong realized that the house was still too small. Gu Xiaoxi and Chang Yaya were in the same room. Even though they had been traveling for a day, Chang Yaya did not feel sleepy at all. After a while, she grabbed his hand and suddenly whispered, "Your brother and sister are fine. I'll get along well with them in the future." The only response she got was Gu Xiaoxi's steady breathing. She turned her head to look at him and moved her head closer to him. Gu Xiaoxi subconsciously hugged her tightly and covered her with the blanket. After a long time, a low voice sounded in the room again. "Marrying you might be the best choice I've made in my life." As everyone had chatted late the day before, it was almost noon when they woke up the next day. Gu Yundong still had to find Aunt Ke and bring Kiki along. As for Yunshu and Yuanji, they were going to attend classes at Tianhai Academy today. It was said that a rather famous teacher was coming. It was a rare opportunity for Yunshu and her brother. They couldn't miss it. Before Gu Yundong left, he asked Gu Xiaoxi, "Do you want me to bring you out for a walk?" Gu Xiaoxi thought for a moment. "All right." Hence, Gu Yundong brought the two of them into the carriage. However, just as the carriage drove out of the alley, another person entered. Chapter 1150. Get out of the carriage. Chapter 1150. Get out of the carriage. The 4-person party became a 5-person party. Gu Yundong looked at Shao Qingyuan speechlessly. "Don't you have to report to the prefecture magistrate?" "There's no hurry. It doesn't matter if he waits a day or 2. I'll ask Aunt Ke about the situation in the capital." They went to Aunt Ke's house, but she was not there. The neighbor said that she went to New Tea Pavilion. Gu Yundong did not expect Aunt Ke to be so dedicated to her work. She had just returned and had already gone to work the next day. The carriage could only turn around and head towards New Tea Pavilion. However, halfway there, Gu Yundong chased Shao Qingyuan and Gu Xiaoxi down. Gu Xiaoxi was dumbfounded. "Why did you ask me to come down? Can't I go to that New Tea Pavilion? New Tea Pavilion only serves female guests. You're a man. What if you scare those female guests?" Gu Xiaoxi widened her eyes. "There's such a tea house?" Gu Yundong nodded. "So, let Brother Shao show you around other places. I'll bring Aunt over to take a look. We'll have dinner at Jinxiu restaurant later. As she spoke, she got Lu Sheng to drive away, leaving Gu Xiaoxi and Shao Qingyuan looking at each other. The two of them stood by the street for a long time before Gu Xiaoxi asked, "So, where are we going now?" Shao Qingyuan thought about it and said, "Jinxiu restaurant." Gu Xiaoxi was speechless. Wasn't it supposed to be the last place where they gathered for dinner? However, Shao Qingyuan had already taken the lead and walked towards the Jinxiu restaurant. To bring a man shopping? Forget it. Let's go to the restaurant to listen to books. It was said that the Jinxiu restaurant had also brought in storytellers recently and began to talk about the cowpox vaccination method. It was quite strange. This matter had already been a few months ago. How could it still be so popular now? Gu Yundong did not know that Shao Qingyuan had gone straight to their destination to wait for them. She introduced the new tea pavilion to Changyaya. The new tea pavilion mainly entertains female guests. There are also children who like to go there and meet new friends. The little girl, who was peeling the melon seeds one by one and planning to eat them, looked up in confusion when she heard her name. Gu Yundong raised her hand and patted her head. She took away the melon seeds that Kiki had placed on the low table and stuffed them into her mouth. Gu Yunka? What happened just now? Where were her melon seeds? The most popular thing in New Tea Pavilion is milk tea. However, it's not good to drink too much milk tea. It's easy to gain weight. Therefore, the female shop assistants will remind those madams and young ladies who often order milk tea to try other things, such as flower tea, black tea, ginger tea, fruit tea, and some snacks and pastries. They're all selling well. You can try them when we reach the shop. Chang Yaya quickly shook her head. They sound very expensive. I don't want them. She had heard it clearly. Yundong said that the people who went to the shop were all madams and young ladies. It was obvious that they were rich. Their food and drinks were definitely not cheap. Kiki peeled a few more melon seeds. Just as she raised her head to rest, she replied, "It's expensive if they're sold to others, but it won't be expensive for little Aunt to drink." Chang Yaya liked Kiki very much and immediately asked her with a smile, "Why?" "Because my sister owns the shop." She thought for a moment and shook her head. "No, my sister owns it with someone else." Chang Yaya suddenly raised her head. Shayuro opened it. As they spoke, the carriage stopped at the entrance of New Tea Pavilion. Chapter 1151. She's Too Attractive. Chapter 1151. She's Too Attractive. Gu Yundong was the first to get out of the carriage. She carried the little girl who was busy stuffing melon seeds into her mouth. When Chang Yaya came down, she was shocked. This was New Tea Pavilion? Wasn't it just a small shop? It was actually so big. Moreover, this New Tea Pavilion was too beautifully renovated and rich. There were actually 2 floors, and it was filled with guests, all of whom had high statuses. Chang Yaya could not move her feet for a moment. It was only when Kiki blocked her and Gu Yundong from both sides that she brought her into New Tea Pavilion. Gu Yundong had not been here for a while. The New Tea Pavilion was even livelier than before. It was not even noon, but the lobby on the first floor was already full. The shop assistants were a little busy. Lan Huar was also there. She had just returned from delivering a cup of milk tea. When she saw Gu Yundong, her face lit up and she hurriedly welcomed him. "Boss Gu, you're here. What do you want to drink? I'll send it to you." There was an empty room in New Tea Pavilion for the owners. Gu Yundong only sat in the other rooms when she first came. Later on, she went to specific rooms. Gu Yundong looked around and asked her, "Where's Aunt Ku?" "Aunt Ku and Madame Chiu are talking inside. They seem to be discussing something. Oh, call them." Lan Huar was about to leave. Gu Yundong stopped her. "No need. Let's wait for them to discuss it first. This is my aunt. Bring us 2 cups of milk tea and 1 cup of milk for Kiki." "All right, boss." Gu Yundong brought Chang Yaya, who was very cautious and did not know where to put her hands and feet, into the backyard. Only then did Chang Yaya realize that this New Tea Pavilion not only had 2 floors, but there was also such a huge courtyard at the back that had so many rooms. Kiki led the way with familiarity. She didn't expect to almost bump into a young lady just as she turned a corner. The young lady was about Kiki's age. Her face was filled with tears, as if she had just cried. Kiki thought that she had scared her to tears. She quickly touched her face and felt that it was not scary. Then she said nervously, "I'm sorry. I walked too quickly. Don't cry. Does it hurt? I'll blow on it for you, okay? Let me tell you, my blowing is especially good. My brother fell and he was painful. I'll blow on him, and he'll be fine." "Really?" The young lady opposite her was stunned. Before she could say anything, a servant girl ran over from afar. "Fifth Miss, so you're here. Why did you run out? Why didn't you tell me? What if we can't find you?" The fifth Miss said unhappily, "Third sister and fourth sister both despise me for being young and don't bring me along to play. I don't care. I don't want to play with them anymore. I've found a new friend. I'll ignore them in the future and won't give them anything to eat." Then she grabbed Kiki's hand and snorted at the maid. Kiki blinked. So she had made new friends again? Was she so attractive? It was unbelievable. The servant girl did not know whether to laugh or cry. It was useless to snort at her. She was just a servant girl. She could not force third miss and fourth miss to play with her. She looked up and was stunned when she saw Gu Yundong. "Are you Boss Gu?" Gu Yundong nodded. "I am." She smiled at the little girl and asked, "What happened?" The maidservant shook her head. How could she tell anyone about her master? However, the fifth young lady was very angry and said it out loud. Chapter 1152. Gu Yundong choked. Chapter 1152. Gu Yundong choked. "My third and fourth sisters are drawing, writing, and playing chess in the house. I want to play too, but they say that I'm young and won't play with me. How am I young? I'm already 4 years old." When Kiki heard this, her eyes lit up. "You're 4 years old? I'm 5. Why don't you be 5 too? This way, we'll be the same age and can play together." Fifth Miss held her hand. "Really? Then that's fine. I'll be 5 years old." Gu Yundong was speechless. "Huh. You can be however old you want." The two of them did not see the shocked expressions of the 3 adults present. They had already walked hand in hand to a room not far away. The maidservant suddenly reacted and hurriedly wanted to stop the fifth Mississippi. Gu Yundong immediately said, "It's fine. Let her play in our room for a while. I'll watch over her. Don't worry. Butayuro. Alternatively, you can follow us to the side room to watch over the fifth Mississippi." The maidservant hesitated for a moment before saying, "Then I'll have to trouble Boss Gu." She did not have to take care of fifth Miss alone. Third Miss and fourth Miss were in another room. After all, Boss Gu was the owner of New Tea Pavilion. She valued the reputation and safety of New Tea Pavilion the most. With her around, nothing would happen. Gu Yundong waited for the maidservant to leave before leading Changyaya, who had been silent, into the room. The 2 young ladies in the room had already started chatting. Their words were innocent and cute, but they spoke seriously. "I've already decided that I don't like my third and fourth sisters anymore. Unless they beg me, I won't talk to them." Kiki nodded. "Yes, my second brother often begs me." "How does he beg you?" Kiki tilted her head and thought for a moment before saying, "He begs me in his heart. I can hear him." Gu Yundong almost spat out a mouthful of water. "You are good. Why didn't I know that there was such a superpower?" Fifth Miss cried like a storm. "But I can't hear third sister and fourth sister begging me. What should I do?" Kiki patted her shoulder and comforted her. "Let me teach you. Come, in your mind imagine your third and fourth sisters begging you." Fifth Miss closed her eyes and thought hard. Then she nodded. "I thought of it." "Yes, think a little harder. Do you feel relieved now?" "I've vented my anger." "Do you forgive them?" "They're forgiven." "That's good." Ptiyuro cough cough cough. Gu Yundong choked in the end. She clutched her stomach and almost stood up. Her face was red. Kiki panicked and quickly ran to her. She tried her best to stand on her toes and pat her back. "Big sister, are you all right? Why are you so careless? You're already so old, yet you can still choke on water. You're making me very worried." "Thank you really." Gu Yundong finally calmed down and felt less uncomfortable. Unexpectedly, when she looked up, she realized that Changyaya was also trying her best to hold back her laughter. Ever since Changyaya entered the room, she did not know where to put her hands and feet. It was only when she heard the children's childish words that she slowly relaxed. She tried her best to suppress the smile on her face and gradually let go of the two children. Actually, the older children are not willing to play with the younger ones, so you can find someone of similar age and play with something else. Play with something else? What? Chapter 1153. Something kids play with. Chapter 1153. Something kids play with. Fifth Miss tilted her little head and looked curious. I know how to flip a flower rope and pitch pot, but they still despise me for being too young and say that I don't have the strength. Humph. Chang Yaya was stunned. Many things played by children from the countryside flashed across her mind, such as jumping on a horse, throwing mud, hitting a rat, throwing stones, and so on. However, these things did not seem to be suitable here. These children were all young ladies from wealthy families. They played elegantly. Didn't they hear what she said just now? Drawing, playing chess, and writing. No one was willing to get mud on them. Facing Fifth Miss' expectant gaze, Chang Yaya instantly felt a little guilty. She could not help but look at Gu Yundong, who stroked her chin thoughtfully. After a while she suddenly said, "That's a problem. I have an idea, but it will take some time." As she spoke, she stroked Fifth Miss' head and said softly, "I have something fun here, but I haven't made it yet. You have to wait for a while. Can you play with Kiki first? When it's done, Kiki will be the first to invite you over to play, okay?" Fifth Miss instantly shifted her gaze and met Gu Yundong's eyes. Her face was filled with excitement. "Something fun? What is it?" "You'll see. Be patient." "Okay." Fifth Miss was comforted and immediately went to flip the flower rope with Kiki. Lan Huan quickly brought in milk tea and milk. Gu Yundong gave Chang Yaya a cup. Chang Yaya only felt that the cup was filled with a sweet fragrance. She could not help but swallow her saliva and lower her head to take a careful sip. Then her eyes lit up. It was really delicious. No wonder so many madams and young ladies like to come to New Tea Pavilion. The thing called milk tea could really make one's tongue taste sweet. Chang Yaya's face was filled with happiness. After drinking half a cup, she suddenly came to her senses. She hurriedly put down the cup and turned to look at Gu Yundong. Unexpectedly, Gu Yundong took out a piece of paper and a brush from somewhere, and was seriously drawing something. She carefully leaned over and looked at it carefully, but she didn't understand. But seeing how focused Gu Yundong was, she did not dare to make a sound to disturb her. She simply watched the two children play. Occasionally, she would take a sip of milk tea and look at the scenery outside the window. Such a quiet and comfortable atmosphere was a lifestyle that Chang Yaya had never experienced before. If only Xiaoxi was here too. As she was thinking, there was a knock on the door. Chang Yaya was shocked and quickly stood up to open the door. There were two middle-aged women standing at the door. When Chang Yaya saw their expressions, her body instantly became stiff and reserved. Fortunately, Gu Yundong's voice quickly sounded from behind. "Madam Qiu, Aunt Ku, you're here. Come in quickly." Chang Yaya immediately made way to let the two in. Madam Qiu was slightly stunned when she saw Fifth Miss playing at the side. When Kiki saw Aunt Ku smiling sweetly at her, she didn't rush over and throw herself into her arms because she still had to accompany her heartbroken friend who had been abandoned by her two sisters. Gu Yundong introduced Chang Yaya to them before saying, "I heard from Lan Hua that you went to discuss something. It seems to be quite important. What is it? Do you want to tell me?" "There's indeed something I want to resolve. Since Boss Gu is here, let's discuss it together." Madam Qiu nodded and sat opposite Gu Yundong. Chapter 1154. Children's Playground. Chapter 1154. Children's Playground. Gu Yundong was all ears. What surprised her was that Madam Qiu and Aunt Ku were discussing the same thing as her. Madam Qiu explained the recent situation of New Tea Pavilion. Ever since young Master Shao became famous in the prefectural city, the business of this milk tea shop has improved. Ordinary people might not know about Shao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong's relationship, but how could the wealthy families in the city not know? They would find out after a simple investigation, so there were especially many madams and young ladies who came to the shop. There were many wives and children. There were not many rooms that were filled with childishness. However, these young children especially liked such a room and were unwilling to give it up. Later on, Madam Qiu thought that she might as well let the children play together, and let the servants watch over them. Then, there would be no need to snatch the room. However, a new problem arose. The younger children could not stay in the room for too long, especially when they saw the older young masters and young ladies drawing and reading. They felt especially bored and shouted to find their mother. After they found their mothers, because the room was too strict, they were dissatisfied again. Therefore, the backyard of New Tea Pavilion would often become chaotic, affecting the other guests. Thus, Madame Chiu started discussing this matter with Aunt Ku, who specialized in taking care of children. Gu Yundong smiled when she heard that. She turned the piece of paper that she had just drawn around to show them. Madame Chiu tilted her head and stared at it for a long time, but she couldn't figure it out. She asked in confusion, "What is this?" "This is called a slide. It's specially for children to play with. There are also small swings beside it, small wooden horses and seesaws. When the time comes, the young children who can't sit still can come to this area to play." The backyard of New Tea Pavilion was big enough. They could specially open a large room with soundproof walls. The ground was covered with a thick carpet, so they were not afraid of the child falling. They also found 2 people to specially look after the child. These kids would love it, she thought. New Tea Pavilion's business was booming, and problems followed. When faced with such a situation, they naturally had to think of a way to resolve it. Gu Yundong used to like the children's area specially set up by some restaurants. When adults ate, they chatted for a long time. Most of the children were impatient and could not sit still. Their parents could not let them run around in the restaurant. At this time, the children's area was very convenient. Madame Chiu's eyes lit up as she listened to Gu Yundong's explanation. There was no need for a large space. There was no need for them to stay quietly. They would not despise the room for not being child-friendly. Good, very good. Madame Chiu clapped her hands and said, "Let's do that." "Boss Gu, are you going to do this?" Gu Yundong thought of Bien Han. His uncle's legs were much better now. He used to be a carpenter, so carpentry was not a problem. However, carpentry jobs were not easy to find, so he gradually began to carve some exquisite things. The slide could be made of many small wooden blocks. Bien Han was used to carving, so he must be very careful and patient when making this thing. At the same time, she would take care of her uncle's business. This was a huge deal. Gu Yundong nodded. "All right, leave this to me." The few of them discussed the design carefully again. Madame Chiu went out to work in satisfaction, and took the sleepy 5th miss away. Only Aunt Ku was left in the room. Gu Yundong then asked about her trip to the capital. Chapter 1155. Fortunately, not long. Chapter 1155. Fortunately, not long. Aunt Ku hugged little Kiki and kissed her passionately for a while. It made her giggle for a while before she let go. Then, she talked about the reason for going to the capital. Nietzong caused some love debt in the capital. It's not a big deal. I accompanied his mother to the capital. It's fine now. As she spoke, she sighed. It's better to come back. The weather in the capital isn't suitable. Xuanhe Prefecture is more comfortable. Gu Yundong nodded. After all, I'm in the Xuanhe Prefecture. The corners of Aunt K's mouth twitched. They had not seen each other for more than half a year. Why was this woman still so shameless? She even said it in a serious and self-righteous manner without any shyness. She glanced sideways at Gu Yundong, and changed the topic. By the way, Nie Shuang has taken a fancy to a suitable shop in the capital and bought it. He said that it will be used to open New Tea Pavilion in the future. I've helped to take a look. The location is indeed not bad. Do you want Feng Danning to continue to help repair it in the capital, or look for it locally? They had been planning to open a New Tea Pavilion in the capital for a long time. Gu Yundong only knew Song Dejiang in the capital. Madame Dai and Nie Shuang knew many people, so they had always asked people to pay attention to suitable shops in the capital. Now that they had found it, it was naturally a happy thing. However, when it would open for business was still debatable. It was necessary to renovate it first. As for the renovator Euro, Gu Yundong said, I have to ask Uncle Feng. After all, it's a long journey to the capital. It will take a lot of time to go back and forth. Aunt Ke nodded and thought of something else. When are you and Shao Qingyuan getting married? Ahem, the end of August. Aunt Ke raised her eyebrows. Have you chosen a date? It was chosen yesterday. Aunt Ke thought for a moment and said, with your mother's current situation, she can't prepare you for the wedding. After all, Dafeng has just arrived at the Xuanhe prefecture not long ago. There are some things she doesn't understand. If you need it, I can help you. Of course I need it. Gu Yundong had long treated Aunt Ke as her own elder. Previously, when she was away from home for a few months, it was Aunt Ke who took care of the family. Moreover, Gu Yundong knew that it was more appropriate to leave these matters to Aunt Ke. When Aunt Ke heard her answer without hesitation, she nodded and took over the matter with satisfaction. I'll discuss it with your eldest aunt and the others when the time comes. Gu Yundong quickly told her about Gu Xiaoxi and Chang Yaya. When the time came, the two pairs would get married together. Aunt Ke had an idea. Gu Yundong chatted with her for a while longer. Seeing that it was getting late, she left New Tea Pavilion with Chang Yaya and Kiki and headed for Jinxiu restaurant. When the three of them entered the room, Gu Yundong noticed that there were many peanuts and snacks on the table. More than half of them had been eaten. She was immediately curious. Have you been here for a long time? Shao Qingyuan was calm. Not long. Gu Xiaoxi smiled. I've heard 3 stories from the storyteller. It's really nice. Gu Yundong. Chang Yaya immediately sat beside Gu Xiaoxi and asked softly, what story did you tell? I'll tell you when we get back. He whispered into her ear. Shao Qingyuan coughed lightly as if nothing had happened. He raised his voice and called out to the waiter outside, serve the dishes. Gu Yundong held back her laughter. After dinner, the few of them stopped shopping. Now that the weather was gradually getting hot, they would often be covered in sweat when they went out in the afternoon. Gu Yundong brought them to Xingtao Street to look for eldest Aunt Gu. Chapter 1156. Discussing business with Uncle. Chapter 1156. Discussing business with Uncle. Ever since she found out about youngest Uncle Gus' whereabouts at the Su residence, Gu Yundong had rushed home with eldest Aunt Gu. Hence, Gu Yundong had never taken a closer look at the house she rented. When she came in again, the house had changed drastically. Bian Han was a carpenter and was best at repairs. Not only did he have a few more shelves in the courtyard, but he also had 2 more benches. Eldest Aunt Gu was very happy to see them. She quickly showed them around her courtyard. Although it's rented and not very big, it's enough for the 3 of us to live in. There's also a small warehouse here with some trinkets carved by his father. Gu Yundong went to look at the carvings. Compared to the small carvings at the beginning, these carvings were more exquisite now. These wooden carvings were in sets. According to eldest Aunt Gu, these sets of wooden carvings were especially popular. There were even some customers who would customize their wood carvings when they saw that something was missing. It seemed that eldest Aunt's business was not bad. After coming out of the warehouse, Gu Yundong turned around and said to Bian Han, Uncle, I have a business deal to discuss with you. I wonder if you're interested. Bian Han was stunned. Business? Yes, I want to hire you to help me make a set of things. Bian Han immediately waved his hand. Yundong, just tell me what you want to do. I can do it immediately. You're treating me like an outsider if you talk about business. Eldest Aunt Gu also nodded at the side. That's right. You're still talking about money with Aunt and Uncle? Gu Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry. Aunt, if I ask Uncle to do it myself, I would definitely not be polite. But this is a job in the shop. How can I take advantage of Uncle? From the shop. Gu Dafeng was surprised. New Tea Pavilion? Gu Yundong nodded. Gu Dafeng immediately became excited. New Tea Pavilion was not Yundong's own business. Of course, the accounts had to be clearly divided. She did not refuse. Then what else does the New Tea Pavilion need him to do? Do you want to carve things? Do you have any requirements for wood? Bian Han rubbed his hands excitedly as he listened from the side. New Tea Pavilion's business. From Yundong's words, it was a big business. Among the people present, only Chang Yaya knew what kind of job it was. Shao Qingyuan and Gu Xiaoxi were both confused. Gu Yundong entered the house with a smile and showed Bian Han the drawings he had made earlier. This is a slide. It's not a small carving. It's a bigger one. It's for children to play with. Can Uncle make it? Bian Han took the blueprints over. He could not understand the blueprints at first, especially the blueprints drawn by Gu Yundong. Only someone like Feng Danning, who had worked with her before, could understand them at a glance. However, Bian Han had been staying in the small courtyard for the past few days. Gu Yundong and Gu Dajiang had painted a lot, so he would also ponder over it. In addition, a portion of the set of things he had carved previously had been drawn by Gu Yundong, so he was quite familiar with this. However, the blueprint this time was of a larger size. He needed Gu Yundong to explain it to him in detail. Bian Han's eyes lit up as he listened. He looked at the blueprint again and again. After a while he said, "Independent Illinois, try it first and make a small one first." Seeing how cautious he was, Gu Yundong felt that there was no problem. Bian Han immediately took a piece of wood and began to work while Gu Yundong and the rest went to the Su residence. Chapter 1157. Hai Pei. Chapter 1157. Hai Pei. After returning from Great Rock Village, Gu Yundong felt that she still had to make things clear to Mother Su about Hong Xiaoni. Gu Xiaoxi also wanted to visit Mother Su. When she first came to the Xuanhe Prefecture, Mother Su had also taken care of him. Moreover, it was Mother Su who told Gu Yundong about him. That was why their family was reunited. They were truly grateful to her. Shao Qingyuan was holding the gifts in his hand when the group entered the Su residence. Mother Su had yet to recognize Gu Xiaoxi at a glance. It was only when she heard him introduce himself that she suddenly reacted. However, she saw Chang Yaya standing beside Gu Xiaoxi. Hong Xiaoni Euro was not around. Mother Su was stunned for a moment, until Gu Yundong told her the whole story. Mother Su was silent for a while after hearing that. In the end, she sighed and said, "I really didn't expect things to turn out like this. Fortunately, you guys went early and saved her in time." Speaking of this, Mother Su suddenly felt a little lucky. When Hong Xiaoni came to visit 2 years ago, she didn't force them to stay at her house. Otherwise, with Hong Xiaoni's character, who knew what kind of storm she would cause to the family? No matter what, everyone was happy. Gu Yundong and the rest returned to the Bian family when they were almost done in the Su family. In just one afternoon, Bian Han had already completed the small slide model. It was very exquisite and small. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up when she saw it. Kiki couldn't bear to put it down. She looked at Bian Han expectantly. The latter laughed and patted her head. "When the slide is ready, I'll give this to Kiki." "Thank you, uncle." The little girl jumped up happily. Bian Han then looked at Gu Yundong and asked, "Is this feasible?" "Of course." Not only that, Gu Yundong looked at the small model and suddenly thought of something else. A kind of small DIY house. With all the components ready, one could build the house by oneself. Gu Yundong felt that other than wood carvings, his uncle might be able to expand and make such small toys in the future. However, it was still too early to talk about this. At least, it had to wait until he finished the work at hand. She just didn't know if his uncle wanted to focus on carving, or if he wanted to earn more money with more novel things. Gu Yundong looked at the slide model again and said to Bian Han, "Since there's no problem, let's talk about the salary next. I've talked to Madame Chiu about making the full set of parts like the slide swing and seesaw. The salary is 20 taels. Of course, this is our offer. Uncle can negotiate. 20 taels? And it was negotiable?" Bian Han and Gu Dafeng were both shocked. Gu Xiaoxi, who was at the side, also widened his eyes and gasped. Was the salary in the prefecture capitale Euro so high? Bian Han hurriedly shook his head. Too much. Yundong, I know you're taking care of me, but you gave me such a high salary. It's hard for you to explain to the other owners. This is not good, not good. Gu Yundong smiled. Uncle, you're thinking too much. I didn't take care of you. This was Madame Chiu's suggestion in the first place. You can ask Aunt. She heard it too. Chang Yaya immediately nodded. When she heard the price, she was also shocked. One had to know that all her savings for several years back, then were only 3 taels of silver. Gu Yundong smiled. Besides, this job is not as easy as you think. Chapter 1158. Half a month later. Chapter 1158. Half a month later. First of all, the slide and swings are for children, so they have to be very sturdy. At the very least, they have to be safe. They have to be smooth and not have wooden spikes. Secondly, this thing has to be very strong. If the wood used is even the slightest bit substandard, it can't be used. Secondly, This slide requires a year of after-sales maintenance in the future. Bianhan was puzzled. What do you mean by after-sales maintenance? You just have to check the repairs every once in a while to see if there's anything that's old and inappropriate. You have to repair and adjust it in time. Bianhan was enlightened. That's not a problem. Not to mention a year, even if it's 8 to 10 years, it'll still go. There was no need for 8 to 10 years. After all, New Tea Pavilion's business was good. When the slide was old, it would definitely be replaced generously. There's one last point. Uncle, your legs have just recovered after all. Some rough and tiring work is still not suitable for you. I'm thinking, can we hire a small worker to help? Bianhan was stunned. He had really never thought about this. But what Gu Yundong said made sense. It was not easy for him to treat his leg. If it broke again because of this, it would be a huge loss. But who should he hire? Bianhan was conflicted. Gu Xiaoxi hurriedly pointed at herself and said, I brother-in-law, I can help you. Bianhan turned to look at him, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Yes, Xiaoxi had just arrived at the Xuanhe prefecture, and she didn't have any work to do now. He was also young and capable, and he was family. He didn't have to worry about leaking Yundong's blueprint. He was the most suitable candidate. All right, then help me. We'll split the money we earn equally. Gu Xiaoxi hurriedly waved her hand. How can we split it equally? I'm just a helper. I don't know much about carpentry. If we split the wages equally, what kind of person would I be? Butayuro, Gu Xiaoxi said. If we split it equally, you'll quit. Seeing this, Gu Yundong could only say to Bianhan, Uncle, it's indeed not appropriate to split it equally. Why don't we do this? Since Uncle is here to help, you'll give him the salary of the workers in the prefectural city. How about that? Bianhan thought about it and nodded in agreement. In the following days, Bianhan and Gu Xiaoxi started to get busy. Because they had to check the location and size of the rooms, the closing time of the New Tea Pavilion had been adjusted for the past few days. It was brought forward by an hour. After the guests had left, Bianhan brought Gu Xiaoxi to take a look at the location. When he was almost done with his research, he started to do it. Because of this, Chang Yaya stayed with Gu Xiaoxi at the Bian family's house and took care of their meals and daily necessities. Anyway, Yuanji and Yunshu had already returned to Fengkai County to attend classes. Hence, the couple also had a room to stay in, and it was not crowded. Bianhan temporarily stopped carving. So Gu Dafeng naturally had less time to go to the market. Hence, she and Aunt Ke prepared for the wedding of Gu Yundong and Gu Xiaoxi. With Aunt Ke's suggestion, Gu Dafeng felt much more at ease. From the beginning, she was afraid that she would not do well. After all, she was just a countryside woman. If she was preparing for the wedding, most of it would be arranged according to the standards of the countryside. However, Yundong and Qingyuan's identities were different now. If they were doing the countryside style, they would look much more petty and would be laughed at. With Aunt Ku around, Gu Dafeng only needed to help from the side and learn more about the rules here. Half a month later, the slide of New Tea Pavilion was finally completed. Chapter 1159. New Tea Pavilion has a new thing. Chapter 1159. New Tea Pavilion has a new thing. Madame Dai and Ye Shuang both knew about slides, but they had never seen one before. They had only heard Madame Chiu give them a rough idea. Gu Yundong had always been proficient in publicity, and it was the same this time. 2 days ago, she had already informed the guests that New Tea Pavilion would be launching new things today. They were specially prepared for guests with children at home. Everyone was interested when they heard that. The things in New Tea Pavilion had always been novel, and would not disappoint anyone. This time, it was said that Boss Gu had personally prepared it. Even Madame Dai and eldest Miss Nye had never seen it before. Driven by curiosity, both the women who were taking care of the children and the young ladies who were not married, yet all appeared at the entrance of New Tea Pavilion. The slide was already in the room. Beside Gu Yundong stood the excited Bianhan and Gu Xiaoxi. After all, they were the ones who made it. They could explain it in front of everyone. Fifth Miss, who had almost bumped into Kiki that day, had also come. Now she was holding Kiki's hand and saying proudly to her third and fourth sisters, Sister Gu said that she suddenly had this idea after hearing my words. That's why Kiki and I are the first to play. You can't compete with me, understand? Her third and fourth sisters were surprised. They didn't know that the new thing from New Tea Pavilion was actually related to their sister. When the madam and young lady heard this, they immediately became even more curious. The slide was covered with a cloth. Madame Dai was holding a corner in her hand, and so was Nie Shuang. Someone said impatiently, "Shouldn't we pull it open? Everyone is almost here." Madame Dai looked at Gu Yundong, who nodded. Madame Dai and Nie Shuang took a deep breath. Their eyes were also filled with anticipation as they reached out and pulled down. With a crash, the cloth on the slide fell to the ground, revealing what was inside. Everyone focused their gazes and saw a strange-looking large object standing in the middle. Everyone did not understand. They only knew that this thing had a ladder. After going up, there was a small house, but the roof of the house was in the shape of a mushroom. It looked especially bright and interesting. There were two slipways beside the house. One was straight, and the other was circular. On the other side of the house was a net. There were handrails on both sides that allowed people to walk over. After passing through the net, there was a small roof. The roof was in the shape of a windmill. It looked like they were in the suburbs and free. There was also a slide here that was slightly higher. There was a fence beside the entire large object. The fence was also shaped. There were even paintings on it. They looked like some small animals and were very cute. Everyone could not help but be curious. What is this? It looks strange. I've never seen it before. Of course you haven't seen it before. Otherwise, how can it be called a novelty? Even Madame Dai and Nie Shuang could not understand it after sizing it up for a long time. Gu Yundong gave Bianhan an encouraging look. Bianhan took a deep breath and tugged at his sweaty palms. He took a step forward and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, you must be very curious about this thing. Let me introduce it to everyone. This thing is called a slide. It's specially designed for children between 3 and 6 years old." Bianhan was stunned for a moment when he saw that everyone's gaze was on him. However, he quickly pinched himself and recited the words he had practiced at home hundreds of times. The slide allows children to exercise their physical fitness, increase the balance of their legs, and make their hands and feet more coordinated. It can also allow children to have more courage and confidence by climbing and sliding. Chapter 1160. Envy. Chapter 1160. Envy. Everyone was a little surprised. These Euro had such a function? Seeing was better than hearing. Gu Yundong saw everyone's gaze and gave Kiki a look. Kiki immediately pulled Fifth Miss forward. When they reached the stairs, she turned to Fifth Miss and said, "Don't be afraid. Just follow me. It's very fun." Fifth Miss was not afraid at all. She was eager to give it a try and nodded vigorously. Kiki started to walk up the stairs. Fifth Miss immediately followed her obediently. Her mother wanted to pull her, but she couldn't. The two girls entered the mushroom house one after another and sat down. Gu Yundong went forward and adjusted their postures before nodding. Kiki moved her butt and slashed down with a swoosh. Fifth Miss followed closely behind and shouted excitedly, "I'm coming down, I'm coming down. It's so fun." There was a blanket at the bottom of the slide, so she was not afraid of falling and colliding. After the two girls slid down, they immediately turned around and climbed the stairs again. Everyone was speechless. The two of them went to the net again and passed by another windmill house. They rode down on the rotary slide. That was not all. The two of them became more and more excited as they played. When they slid down, they went to climb the ladder or walk the net. They went back and forth a few times, making the other children beside them envious. They revealed longing expressions. The ladies and young girls present actually felt that it was quite interesting, but this slide was too small for them. It was impossible for them to play even if they wanted to. Hence, when Kiki and Fifth Miss tried to climb the ladder for the third time, they were caught by Third Mississippi. She asked excitedly, "Fifth sister, is this slide really that fun? What does it feel like to go up?" It felt a little high when I first walked up. But with Kiki around, I'm not afraid at all. Kiki held my hand and it was very firm. When I went down the slide, I felt like I was flying. It's too interesting. Oh right, there's also that net. When I first left, I thought I would fall, but I didn't. After all, the net is small. I'm too big. After saying that, She broke free from third Miss Hand and ran over again. When the other children heard this, they couldn't take it anymore and wanted to play too. Mother, I'm not afraid of heights at all. I want to go. I want to go through that net. I'm very big too. I want to slide down. I want to fly. The madams and young ladies present had a headache from the noise, but some were deep in thought. Perhaps it could really improve a child's courage? The height of this slide was indeed average for them, but it was a little high for children. If they could overcome their timidity and have fun, and also solve the noise problem in New Tea Pavilion, wouldn't that be perfect? All of them looked at Gu Yundong. The latter smiled and said, "Of course you can play if you want, but there are 3 rules." The children nodded profusely. Firstly, you have to line up. Come one by one. You can't bully the weak. Secondly, you have to protect your belongings and not sabotage them. Don't kick the slide and cause trouble for others. Thirdly, you have to follow the order. Go up the steps, but don't climb. Be reasonable and don't make a fuss. That was all for now. She would think of other things later. Can you do these 3 things? As soon as Gu Yundong finished speaking, the children present immediately nodded. Yes, yes, yes. Chapter 1161. Salary of 20 taels. Chapter 1161. Salary of 20 taels. Gu Yundong got someone to arrange for them to line up and come one by one. Then, she lifted the other 3 pieces of cloth. Everyone was stunned and looked at the 3 facilities. One was a swing set. They knew this. The other was a small wooden horse. They also knew this. The last Oniyuro. Gu Yundong did not say much and let Kiki and 5th Miss play. The 2 of them immediately sat on both sides of the seesaw. There were 2 small stools on both sides, and there was a rail in front for you to hold. After Kiki sat on it, she tapped her toes and flew up. The other children were attracted over, but they also wanted to play with the slide. They looked at this and then at that, their faces filled with anxiety. But these children were still queuing obediently because of what Gu Yundong had said. Soon, people at the swing set and the small wooden horse went up to play, but the most lively thing was still the slide. A madam looked at the lively scene and could not help but say, "My son has always liked to pretend to be an adult. It's rare to see him acting like this now." "That's right. My girl has always been afraid of heights. She doesn't mind now." Presumably, she had been pretending in the past, but when she saw something fun, she revealed her true colors. The children played together. These people were all children from wealthy families. They had been trained in basic etiquette since they were young. Most of them could listen, so it was not difficult to manage them. Aunt Ko was in charge here. She had always liked children, and could even tell stories to these little fellows. Gu Yundong saw that there was nothing else for her to do here, so she brought Bian Han and Gu Xiaoxi out. As soon as the 2 of them arrived at the courtyard, they could not help but feel excited. "I didn't expect it to be so popular. Look at those children. They're having a lot of fun. I think the guests are also very satisfied." Gu Yundong led them to the counter and said, "When this place becomes popular, there might be business. Uncle, you have to be mentally prepared." Bian Han clenched his fists. "Will there really be business? Will they spend money to make such a thing and leave it at home?" "Of course there will. You'll know when the time comes." As they spoke, the 3 of them stopped in front of the counter. Madame Chiu was already there. When she saw Gu Yundong, she nodded slightly. Then, he took out a money bag from under the counter and pushed it in front of Bian Han. With a businesslike expression, he said, "Hey, raise 20 taels of silver. It's the fee for this slide. According to what we agreed on back then, there's still a year to repair it." 20 taels of silver. Was it really 20 taels of silver? Bian Han could be considered to have seen the world now, but earning 20 taels in one go was still a huge sense of accomplishment for him. He nodded quickly. "I'll come over often to see if the slide swing is damaged. Many, many thanks." Bian Han kept the silver and smiled widely. It had only been half a month, but he had already earned so much. After the payment was settled, Gu Yundong left New Tea Pavilion with the 2 of them. After getting into the carriage, Bian Han opened the money bag and took out the silver pieces inside. He handed 3 taels of silver to Gu Xiaoxi. "Erase your pay." The workers in the prefectural city earned about 3 taels of silver a month. This was the case for Su Changshan and Zhuangzi in Gu Yundong's shop. Gu Xiaoxi had actually only worked for half a month. However, the estimated working period was a month. The salary had already been discussed, so the money wasn't too much. Chapter 1162. Building a house. Chapter 1162. Building a house. Gu Xiaoxi did not decline. He held the silver happily and even took a big bite. Only then did he laugh out loud. Although he had more than 100 taels of silver on him now, in the end, he did not earn them himself. Now that he had this money in his hand, he felt especially at ease. At the thought of this, he suddenly sighed again. Yundong said that there would be more business coming to my door in the future. I want to help you and you can give me a salary. Unfortunately, I have to transfer the household register to Yongfu village first and build a house. He had wanted to go back previously, but he happened to bump into Bianhan who wanted to do a slide, so he was delayed for half a month. After all, he was going to get married. How could he not have a house? At that time, wouldn't Yaya be wronged? He had money in his hands now. He could build a better one. At the mention of building a house, Gu Yundong could not help but turn to look at Bianhan. Uncle, do you want to take this opportunity to build your house? Bianhan wanted to cover it, but he hesitated. Now that they had some money in their hands, they had discussed with Dafeng before that it was best to build a house as soon as possible. Although they were renting a house in the city now, in their opinion, they had to have a root in their hometown. Mulan's grave was still in the back mountain of Yongfu village. Yuanji was also staying in the county city to study. In the future, when he returned to his hometown during the New Year and holidays, he could not stay in the Gu family forever. That would be ridiculous. What they were hesitating about was how the house should be built and how big it should be. Who wouldn't want to build a bigger, sturdier, and more imposing house? Especially when they saw the two green brick houses of the Gu and Shao families. Everyone in the village was envious. When Bianhan first saw it, a raging fire burned in the depths of his heart. He secretly swore that he would do the same when he built a house in the future. He had money in his hands now. Although it was not enough, Yundong had been tight on money when she was building the house. He could borrow it and work hard. And yet Bianhan could only think about it in his heart. He did not have Yundong's courage to build such a house after escaping from the famine. He did not have Yundong's ability either. Before the house was built, she had already earned enough money. He thought about building a house that was slightly larger than the one he was renting now. However, he and Gu Dafeng were still hesitating about whether to build a mud house or a brick house. Now that Gu Yundong asked, Bianhan also wanted to hear her opinion. A brick house. Gu Yundong's answer came as no surprise. Bianhan had already guessed it. It was the same for him and Gu Dafeng. Now Gu Yundong had made up his mind for them. On the other hand, Gu Xiaoxi frowned and asked softly, "Are we going to build a brick house?" In the past, in Gu village, only the chief's house was a brick house. If we build it so well, won't others be jealous? As he spoke, he quickly calculated the money in his heart. He had enough money in his hands, but he still had to save it for the wedding and farming. He had to save it. Bianhan glanced at Gu Xiaoxi, who had his head lowered, with a complicated look in his eyes. Jealous? You're thinking too much. When you see the houses of the Gu family and the Shao family, you will know that if you are too jealous, you will become numb. After the discussion, Gu Yundong and the rest returned to Yongfu village the next day. Shao Qingyuan, Gu Xiaoxi, and his wife returned too. Bianhan and Gu Dajiang stayed in the Xuanhe prefecture for the time being. Chapter 1163. Feeling very poor. Chapter 1163. Feeling very poor, they were going to settle down in Yongfu village in the future. Gu Xiaoxi and Chang Yaya were still a little excited. From the moment they arrived at the entrance of the village, they couldn't help but lift the curtain of the carriage to look outside. This road is really wide. I didn't expect a village's road to be similar to an official road. Gu Xiaoxi sighed. It seems that Yongfu village is much richer than Gu village. Gu Dafeng covered her mouth and laughed. This is all thanks to Yundong. Huh? Gu Xiaoxi was puzzled. Just as she was about to ask, she heard Chang Yaya's exclamation. There's actually such a magnificent house in the village. Gu Xiaoxi immediately looked in the direction of her finger and widened her eyes in shock. The carriage stopped at that moment. Gu Yundong and the rest alighted, but Gu Xiaoxi was still in a daze. Gu Dafeng walked to the carriage window and reached out to pat his head. All right, come down quickly. We're home. We're home. Gu Xiaoxi hurriedly came down. Then, she watched as Gu Dafeng and the others calmly walked into the spacious and imposing green brick house. His mouth fell open in astonishment. No, it can't be, can it? This is his brother's house? Gu Xiaoxi turned around and exchanged glances with Chang Yaya, who was also stunned. After a while he began to worry about his silver. Initially he thought that 100 taels was already a lot, but now, it seemed like he was very poor. Seeing that they did not come in for a long time, Gu Dafeng ran out and pulled the two of them in. As soon as she entered, Gu Xiaoxi realized that this house was even more beautiful and unique than she had imagined. He fell in love with it at first glance. He began to count the money in his hands again. Gu Yundong did not wait for him to finish calculating, and went to look for Chen Liang. Chen Liang had been overjoyed recently. The cowpox vaccination in their village had been completed, but Shao Quan did not leave. He was still holding down the fort in Yongfu village. Therefore, many people from the neighboring villages came to ask for help. Now Yongfu village was in high demand. It was extremely popular. During this period of time, there were many matchmakers who visited. Some had daughters who wanted to marry into Yongfu village, and some had sons who wanted to marry the daughters of Yongfu village. Chen Liang walked with the wind under his feet, looking exceptionally imposing. And these were all blessings brought about by Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan. Therefore, when he saw Gu Yundong coming to look for him, Chen Liang immediately got Madame Zhou to make tea and send snacks. He smiled and let them sit. He asked happily, "Why are you back at the village at this time? Did something happen in the workshop?" Then he looked at Gu Xiaoxi and Chang Yaya. These two €. They're my uncle and aunt. Chen Liang was stunned for a moment, and was a little uncertain. Who are they again? My uncle and aunt, Gu Yundong repeated. Chen Liang's eyes widened. Of course he knew that the Gu family had been looking for Gu Xiaoxi. To be honest, he had always thought that the youngest uncle of the Gu family might have passed away a long time ago. He did not expect them to really find him. His surprised gaze circled around Gu Xiaoxi twice before he finally suppressed the gossip in his heart and said, Congratulations. Your family is finally reunited." "Yes, our family is reunited." Gu Yundong sighed. "So this time, besides letting my uncle's household register be in Yongfu village, we also want to build my uncle and aunt's house. This is a good thing." Chen Liang clapped his hands happily. After a pause, he seemed to have thought of something and asked, "Or do you want your Uncle Feng to build it?" Chapter 1164. Budget for the house. Gu Yundong shook his head. Uncle Feng is very busy now. He has a few major businesses on hand that he has to personally keep an eye on, so I didn't look for him. Feng Danning had always been grateful to Gu Yundong. If the Gu family wanted to build a house, he would come personally without a word. It was Gu Yundong who stopped him. He had finally stabilized his footing in the prefectural city, and happened to have an urgent job in his hands. He had agreed with his boss that he would do it personally and had a completion date. If he ignored it at this juncture, his good reputation would be ruined. Therefore, Gu Yundong found his disciple Shao Gao. Shao Gao had always followed Feng Danning, and did not leave when he was down and out. He was a very patient and meticulous person. He was also diligent in his work. Gu Yundong was relieved. As for the renovation of the shop in the capital that Aunt Ku had mentioned to Gu Yundong, she had also looked for Feng Danning. Feng Danning thought about it for a long time and rejected it. Even though he knew that this was a very rare opportunity given to him by Gu Yundong. Even though he also wanted to go up, he was very clear about his ability. If he walked too quickly, it would be easy for him to fall down. It was better to build a solid foundation in the prefectural city, before developing to the surroundings. Didn't everybody see that Gu Yundong's shop was only open in the prefectural city and not in the capital? It was not that she had no money or ability, but it was just not time yet. The new tea pavilion business only dared to take down the shop because of Madame Dai and Ye Shuang. They had connections in the capital. Therefore, they were still discussing finding suitable craftsmen for the renovation of new tea pavilion in the capital. Chen Liang nodded when he heard what she meant. Xiao Gao is an expert too. He knows how to be grateful. He could have finished his apprenticeship long ago. He has always been by Daning's side. It won't be a problem to hand him over. Gu Yundong nodded and told Chunliang the start date. Then, she bid farewell to Madame Zhou and returned to the Gu residence. The next day, the news that the Gu family was going to build a house spread. At this moment, farming had begun. Many people were busy, but anyone who had some free time would come and help. Gu Xiaoxi and Bianhan's house was at the foot of the mountain. Gu Yundong had bought the land in their name. The land at the foot of the mountain became extremely hot because of the newly built road. Recently, a few families had already built houses nearby. There were too many people living in the original houses, so they chose this place after splitting up. Gu Xiaoxi and Bianhan had taken a closer look at the location and were thinking about the shape of the house. After learning that the Gu family's brick house was designed and painted by Gu Yundong, Gu Xiaoxi took a brush and paper and stuffed them into her hands without hesitation. Help me draw one too. I don't need one as big as yours. Just a smaller one. He tried his best to restrain his gaze from looking at the green brick house in front of him, lest he lost control and wanted to build it bigger. Gu Yundong was amused by his bitter expression. All right, then tell me first. How much do you plan to spend on building this house? Gu Xiaoxi counted with his fingers and gritted his teeth. 30 to 40 taels. At most, it won't exceed 40 taels. Gu Yundong knew what to do. All right, I'll draw it for you. Bianhan's budget was originally not as high as Gu Xiaoxi's. He did not have more than 100 taels of silver in his hands. However, there was still a fire burning in his heart. Hence, he gritted his teeth and planned to build a house like Gu Xiaoxi's. Gu Yundong nodded and began to draw. However, the next day, Bianhan returned to Xuanhe Prefecture. Chapter 1165. Why is Taoyin here? Gu Yundong was right. The Xuanhe Prefecture had indeed found Bianhan for business. Although it was not a slide, but just 2 small wooden horses, it was still a good start. Hence, the construction of the house was left to Gu Xiaoxi. Gu Xiaoxi was in high spirits every day. He discussed with Xiao Gao how to build the house every day as if he was very experienced. After Gu Yundong finished drawing the structure of the house, she did not interfere much. On the other hand, Qingyuan helped Gu Xiaoxi pull the bricks and tiles very skillfully. Seeing that the house was being built bit by bit, Gu Yundong began to ponder about the expansion of the Gu family's workshop. The workshop was still too small. Although it was not a problem to supply the 2 shops in the county and prefectural city, that was only under the circumstances of limited purchasing. Prefecture Magistrate Dai had told her last time that the limited purchase of white sugar had already caused many families in the prefectural city to be dissatisfied. It would not be good for her if this continued. Therefore, Gu Yundong planned to increase the production volume. Then the workshop would have to expand again. When Qingyuan pulled the last cart of bricks back, he saw Gu Yundong standing at the entrance of the workshop with a thoughtful expression. What is it? Gu Yundong stroked her chin and told him about her plan to expand the workshop. Qingyuan paused and said, Why don't we build another workshop and separate the white sugar from the sweets and canned fruits? Build another one? Gu Yundong thought of how messy the sugar area was and suddenly felt that it was necessary. All right, after eldest aunt and uncle's house is built, we'll get Xiao Gao to continue building the workshop. There was no need to find another place. They could just build another house beside the Gu family's workshop. The 2 of them discussed the matters of the workshop. Just as they were talking excitedly, a familiar voice suddenly came from behind. Gu Yundong turned around and saw Lu Wei getting off the horse excitedly. However, what surprised her was that there was someone behind him. It was actually Euro Taoyin? Gu Yundong could not help but look at Qingyuan. Why is Taoyin here? As he spoke, Lu Wei had already walked in front of the 2 of them. You guys have been back from the prefectural city for more than half a month, and didn't even tell me. If I hadn't happened to come to your shop to buy things, I wouldn't have known. As he spoke, he looked behind them for a while. By the way, I heard that your uncle has been found too? Where is he? Gu Yundong was speechless. Why would you want to see my uncle? You don't even know him. I'm just curious. Gu Yundong ignored him and looked behind him. Tao Yin led his horse over and cupped his hands at the two of them. Young Master Shao, Miss Gu, sorry to disturb you. Third Young Master Tao, what brings you to Yongfu village? Tao Yin smiled and said, I'm here to look for Miss Gu. Coincidentally, young Master Lu was also coming over, so we traveled together. Shao Qingyuan frowned. Looking for me? Gu Yundong was surprised. She felt that she should not have any interaction with Tao Yin. Even so, Gu Yundong still brought the two of them back to the Gu house. After they were served tea, Gu Yundong asked, Third Young Master Tao, why are you looking for me? I remember the last time at Jinxiu restaurant, Miss Gu took out a handkerchief and showed it to young Master Peng. You even asked about the origin of the handkerchief, right? Gu Yundong's expression tightened when she heard the handkerchief. She clenched her fists by her side. She nodded and asked, Yes, why did Third Young Master Tao suddenly ask about the handkerchief? Chapter 1166. How lustful Tao Yin smiled and said, Back then, I saw that the handkerchief was indeed quite extraordinary, so I also took a few more glances. Especially when I heard young Master Peng say that the material of the handkerchief was rare. I subconsciously paid more attention when I saw it again. Shao Qingyuan narrowed his eyes. Again? Have you seen that material again? Tao Yin looked up and glanced at Shao Qingyuan. As expected, Gu Yundong did not unintentionally obtain the handkerchief. It should be special to them. Moreover, he had noticed the word Shao on the handkerchief at that time, as in Shao Qingyuan. However, looking at their expressions, Tao Yin realized that they were not completely secretive about this matter. That was right. If it was very private and they did not let anyone know, she wouldn't have asked Peng Zhongfei about the handkerchief in front of him. He sighed inwardly and said, Yes, I've seen it again. He did not wait for Gu Yundong to ask again. This time, his answer was very straightforward. A few days ago, I followed eldest brother to Jingzhou Prefecture for a business deal. The other party had a friend with him. The pouch hanging at his waist was made of this kind of fabric. At that time, I took a few more glances and thought that Miss Gu seemed to be very interested in this material, so I asked a few more questions. That person was a talkative person and really told me a lot about the material. Previously, young Master Peng said that cloth was rare, and that was indeed the case. However, he was wrong about one thing. Ordinary people really don't have this material. Even if they do, they don't dare to use it. Therefore, those who can use it are all high-ranking officials and nobles. This has only happened in the past few years. If it was 10 years ago, there would be even fewer people who would use it. Gu Yundong's eyes sparkled. Few people used it 10 years ago? Brother Shao's handkerchief was from 20 years ago, so fewer people must have used it. Their range could be narrowed down again and again. Shao Qingyuan, on the other hand, was very calm. He took a sip of tea and said to Tao Yin, That person knows what happened 10 years ago. Yes, that person's status in the capital is not ordinary. It's said that 20 years ago, their Shao family was one of the top families in the capital. They had once made a great contribution and received a reward from the previous emperor. This cloth was among the rewards. Gu Yundong was stunned. The Shao family? She glanced at Shao Qingyuan and smiled. They have the same surname as Brother Shao. Yeah, that is the Marquis of Huayin estate. The old Marquis back then was a famous figure. Marquis Huayin, surnamed Shao, had obtained such fabric 20 years ago. Gu Yundong was slightly excited. Could it be that Brother Shao's identity was about to be revealed? She looked at Shao Qingyuan, and the meaning in her eyes could be seen at a glance. Gu Yundong thought that he would be as impatient as her. Unexpectedly, Shao Qingyuan said firmly, Let's get married first. But the wedding is at the end of August. Get married first. Gu Yundong was speechless. All right, after the wedding, it seemed that she had to make a trip to the capital. However, she did not know if this Marquis Huayin was related to Big Brother Shao. She wanted to ask more about Marquis Huayin, but she didn't expect Lu Wei to suddenly exclaim, Wait. What did I just hear? Did I hear something? Gu Yundong was almost frightened by him. What did he hear? Did he have to be so thrilled? However, Lu Wei suddenly grabbed Gu Yundong's shoulders. Shao Qingyuan narrowed his eyes and quickly separated them, allowing Lu Wei to grab his shoulders. Lu Wei didn't care about this. It didn't matter who he caught. As if provoked, he shook Shao Qingyuan twice. What kind of words did you say just now? Repeat what you said just now. Chapter 1167. This is related to me? Shao Qingyuan pushed Lu Wei's face away. No matter how excited he was, he couldn't spout nonsense, right? Calm down. What did we say? Lu Wei almost screamed. You said you were getting married. You said you were getting married at the end of August, right? Yes, a euro. Why didn't you tell me such an important thing? Gu Yendong's mouth twitched. Wasn't there still some time before the end of August? Did she need to tell him so early? But seeing how agitated he was, Gu Yendong felt that it was better not to provoke him. It was Shao Qingyuan who sneered and looked like he wanted to settle the score. Did you inform us that you were engaged? Lu Wei was speechless. He immediately felt that he was in the wrong and let go of Shao Qingyuan's shoulder guiltily. He took a step back and said softly, It's going to be cancelled soon, all right? This time it was Tao Yan's turn to be surprised. When did you get engaged? Why didn't we hear anything about it? Are you breaking off the engagement now? Lu Wei suddenly came back to his senses. He pulled Tao Yan up and pushed him out of the door. Why are you so nosy? Go out, go out. Don't listen to what you shouldn't. Just like that, Tao Yan was pushed out of the door. Lu Wei closed the door in front of him without hesitation. Tao Yan. A euro. Shao Qingyuan pulled Lu Wei back and opened the door again. He said to Tao Yan, Let's go to my house for a cup of tea. Tao Yan also knew that it wasn't easy to ask about Lu Wei. He didn't really want to know anything. He was just a little euro curious. Now that Shao Qingyuan had given him a way out, he naturally followed suit. The two of them turned around and left. Gu Yundong raised his eyebrows and looked at Lu Wei. He said, Last time, your father said that he wanted to investigate the Zhang family. Have you finished your investigation? Lu Wei nodded. When he talked about this, he was still a little indignant. You don't know this, but that Zhang family is too despicable. I'm afraid that'll dirty your ears if I say it. Although he said that, he still explained everything about the Zhang family in detail. Gu Yundong. A euro my ears. However, after hearing Lu Wei's words, she was really shocked. It was simply an eye-opener. She did not expect the Zhang siblings to be able to play like this. My father was so angry that he was sick for a few days. If my sister hadn't stopped me, I would have gone to the Zhang family to beat them to death. Gu Yundong glanced at him from the corner of his eye. Fortunately, your sister stopped you. But since the matter has been investigated, why hasn't the marriage been cancelled? Of course my father wants to withdraw, but how can things be so simple? Although the Zhang family is in the wrong in this matter, there's no evidence at all from the things my father investigated. Even if we expose it to the Zhang family won't admit it. Instead, they will accuse us. Gu Yundong frowned. Since your father has found out, how can there be no evidence? Zhang Hao's wife told my father about these things. His wife couldn't possibly testify for us, so the matter was tied up. After a pause, Lu Wei continued. Actually, my father also beat around the bush and hinted to old Master Zhang that our family wanted to break off the engagement, but old Master Zhang was simply hateful. He actually threatened us openly and secretly. And a euro. As Lu Wei spoke, he stopped and stole a glance at her. Gu Yundong narrowed his eyes. Why? Does this matter have something to do with me? Chapter 1168. I have an affair with you. Lu Wei sighed and sat on a chair at the side, feeling a little dejected. He said weakly, It's all my fault. If I hadn't said in front of Zhang Jiao that you were better than her in everything and wanted to anger her to death, she wouldn't have hated you. My father said that if we took the initiative to break off the engagement, he would have to suspect that I was having an affair with you. His father did not tell old Master Zhang that he already knew about Zhang Jiao's scandal. He did not want the Zhang family to really use despicable methods to slander him and Gu Yundong. Zhang Jiao's notoriety could spread far and wide, but why should Gu Yundong be dragged down? Wouldn't he be at a disadvantage? Gu Yundong. A euro therefore. She really wanted to smash Lu Wei's head. It was fine if he used her as a shield for no reason, but he had to say such things to provoke Zhang Jiao, who was abnormal to begin with. Even if he was telling the truth, shouldn't he be more tactful? So, Uncle Lu didn't want this matter to involve me, So he couldn't cancel the engagement? Lu Wei nodded but quickly said, "But don't worry, my father is thinking of ways to get evidence. He definitely won't let you get into trouble." Gu Yundong did not know what to say. She was not afraid of the Zhang family slandering her, and these things could be explained. However, she would still be plagued by trouble. Old Master Lu was thinking for her, and did not want her to get involved in the Lu and Zhang family's matters. That was why he delayed the disengagement. It was just that the Zhang family was too disgusting. It seemed that they had to cling to the Lu residents. It did not matter even if they became enemies. Huh? Gu Yundong suddenly narrowed her eyes. The marriage between the two families would definitely be a good thing. Why did old Master Zhang seem to be clinging to the Lu residents? Gu Yundong reminded Lu Wei. Ask your father to investigate the Zhang family again. I have a feeling that they are hiding some secrets. Yes. Lu Wei nodded. He stood up, as if his fighting spirit had been reignited. Of course, they had to continue investigating and find evidence to break off the engagement. However, after talking about the Zhang family, Lu Wei asked about her wedding with Shao Qingyuan. Knowing that it was the end of August, he immediately began to think about what to wear that day. As Shao Qingyuan's best brother, he would definitely come to welcome the bride on the day of the wedding. He was even thinking about how to deal with the bride when she made things difficult for him. Or should he build a good relationship with Gu Yundong's brother in advance? By the way, wasn't her brother Gu Yinshu? He was studying in the same school as Lu Yi. He wanted Lu Yi to be a spy and find out if Gu Yinshu had any strange ideas to make things difficult for them. His thoughts were wandering. When Tao Yin came back with Shao Qingyuan, he finally looked serious. Tao Yin glanced at him and didn't say anything. The two of them did not stay in the Gu house for long. Lu Wei came over to tell Gu Yundong about the Zhang family. After dinner, Lu Wei saw Gu Xiaoxi and finally left in satisfaction. Just as they left, Gu Xiaoxi was about to talk about the progress of building the house. Unexpectedly, just as he opened his mouth, Gu Yundong pulled Shao Qingyuan into the house with a serious expression. Gu Xiaoxi was speechless. Can't you see that I'm an adult? He went to look for his wife resentfully. At this moment, Gu Yundong asked Shao Qingyuan in a low voice. What did you say to Tao Yan? Did he say why he specially came over to tell us about the fabric? Chapter 1169. Who did you like? Gu Yundong admitted that he had no friendship with Tao Yan. They had only met once the last time. He had paid attention to the fabric for no reason, and had even specially made a trip to Yongfu village to tell them that Gu Yundong did not believe that he was just bored. Shao Qingyuan was the same. He had indeed tested Tao Yan. Tao Yan's answer was very interesting. He said that he admires our abilities and wants to build a good relationship with us and make friends. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. Make friends? He clearly knows that we don't get along with the Tao family. I won my shop in the county city from the Tao family. Is he making friends? He wants us to owe him a favor. Yes. Shao Qingyuan nodded. From his words, I guess the Tao family's situation is a little tense now. Tao Yan had been brought back by Tao Feng for a period of time. With old Master Tao and old Madame Tao's hatred for him, his life in the Tao family would probably not be easy, especially after hearing that the Tao family's recent businesses were not very good, and their profits were also declining. As such, old Master Tao believed that Tao Yan was the Tao family's nemesis. If he could not suppress Tao Yan and make him unable to raise his head, the Tao family would be finished sooner or later. The Tao family would also be very dissatisfied with Tao Feng. Some time ago, Tao Feng was in charge of most of the Tao family's business. Now it was back in Tao Xing's hands. The Tao family was now completely divided into two factions. One group consisted of Tao Feng and Tao Yan, while the other group consisted of Master Tao and the others. If the Tao Feng brothers wanted to live a good life, they had to be in charge. The reason why Tao Yan wanted to befriend Gu Yundong was not necessarily because of Gu Yundong's ability, but because of the relationship between Gu Yundong and Qin Wenzheng. When Tao Feng found Tao Yan back then, Qin Wenzheng was a secret helper. Tao Feng should have known Qin Wenzheng's identity. So they want to seize power and destroy Master Tao, but they actually want to borrow Qin Wenzheng's hand. That's the gist of Tao Yan's words. Gu Yundong touched her chin and sat on the chair. Shao Qingyuan poured her a glass of water and said, "But the Tao family is involved in other matters now. Qin Wenjing clearly knows that there's something wrong with them, but he hasn't acted yet. I'm afraid it's not time yet." Gu Yundong sighed. "So not only can we not become Tao Yan's helpers, but we also have to make sure that Tao Yan and Master Tao are not allowed to touch them?" Why did she feel so uncomfortable? Shao Qingyuan nodded, but he changed his mind and said, "Perhaps we can ask Qin Wenjing for his opinion." Shao Qingyuan felt that Qin Wenjing had not moved, perhaps because there was no movement from the Tao family. Perhaps he could alert the enemy. Gu Yundong obviously had the same thoughts as him. He looked up and the two of them looked at each other. They seemed to have a tacit understanding. At the thought of this, Shao Qingyuan's eyebrows moved. He couldn't help but lower his head and kiss her. He really hoped that the end of August would come sooner, so that he wouldn't have to be so sneaky. Just as he was thinking about it, he suddenly heard messy footsteps outside. Immediately after, there was a knock on the door, followed by Gu Xiaoxi's panicked voice. "Yundong, something bad has happened." Gu Yundong suddenly came back to her senses. She stood up and pushed Shao Qingyuan out. A trace of frustration flashed across the latter's heart. With an unfriendly expression, he went over and opened the door. Outside the door stood Gu Xiaoxi, whose face was covered in sweat. Chapter 1170. Pregnant. Shao Qingyuan frowned. What happened? Gu Xiaoxi looked like he was about to cry. Yaya suddenly vomited. Then her face turned pale and she fainted. When Gu Yundong heard this, she hurriedly got up and walked out. Why did she faint? Gu Xiaoxi shook his head. I don't know. At first, I thought she ate something bad, but why would she faint? As he spoke, he turned around and led the two of them quickly to his room. When they entered the house, they realized that Chang Yaya was indeed lying on the bed with a pale face. Beside her was Shen Sitian, who had also heard the commotion and came over. She held a towel in her hand and was wiping the corners of Chang Yaya's mouth. Seeing Shao Qingyuan coming over, she quickly took 2 steps back to make room for him. Shao Qingyuan was now half a doctor. He could treat ordinary symptoms or take pulses. After all, he had stayed with more than 100 doctors in the Million Gold Pavilion for a few months. He did not forget anything he needed to learn. He sat on the stool by the bed and reached out to take Chang Yaya's pulse. Gu Xiaoxi watched worriedly from the side. She was so nervous that her hands were intertwined. After a while, Shao Qingyuan retracted his hand and frowned in deep thought. How is it? Gu Xiaoxi asked nervously. Is there something wrong with her body? Yaya has suffered a lot in the past and her health has always been bad. Is it now? Shao Qingyuan didn't say anything and reached out to take her pulse again. Gu Yundong hurriedly held Gu Xiaoxi back and told her not to speak. The room was silent except for the shallow breathing of the few of them. It was only when Shao Qingyuan retracted his hand that the 3 of them looked at him steadily. She should be pregnant, Shao Qingyuan said. He was actually a little uncertain. It seemed that she hadn't been pregnant for long, and the baby's pulse was faint. The 3 people in the room were speechless. What did they just hear? Chang Yaya was pregnant. Gu Xiaoxi was stunned. His entire body froze as he stood there motionlessly. When Gu Yundong finally reacted, he suddenly pushed him and said happily, "Uncle, are you stupid? Brother Shao just said that auntie is pregnant." Gu Xiaoxi turned his head around in a daze and blinked. So I didn't hear wrongly just now? I'm going to be a father? My wife is pregnant." "Yes." Shen Sitian smiled. "Congratulations." The corners of Gu Xiaoxi's mouth were wide open as he suddenly rushed to the bed. You. He stopped mid-sentence and turned to ask Shao Qingyuan worriedly. But why did Yaya faint? She even fainted when she was pregnant. Will she be all right? When will she wake up? It's fine. She'll wake up soon. She fainted because her body was weak to begin with, and she didn't receive good care because of the cold. She was too tired from building the house these few days, so she fainted. Only then did Gu Xiaoxi relax. Shao Qingyuan thought for a moment and said, "But she hasn't been pregnant for long. It's better for you to take her to the county city's medical center and find an experienced doctor to take a look and confirm it." Shao Qingyuan didn't know much about gynecology. However, It seemed that he had to pay more attention to this aspect in the future, so that Yundong could receive better care in the future. It was unknown if Gu Xiaoxi had heard Shao Qingyuan's words, but he just nodded vigorously and looked at Chang Yaya carefully. Then he looked at her belly and smiled foolishly. Chapter 1171. Something forgotten. Gu Yundong secretly shook her head and heaved a sigh of relief. Uncle, take good care of little aunt first. Nourish her well later. Don't let her go to the new house for the time being. Gu Xiaoxi kept nodding. Gu Yundong thought that she should wait for Chang Yaya to wake up first. The three of them left him to take care of her, and turned to leave the room. As soon as they walked out of the door, she saw Tong Shuitao walking over with a child in her arms. This child was the son that Madame Jiang had given birth to not long ago. Now that he was almost 2 months old, he was especially obedient. Usually he did not cry or make a fuss. He only cried when he was hungry. Gu Yundong walked over and held his little hand. The little guy immediately grinned, revealing his pink gums. He was very happy, making her feel happy. Gu Yundong looked up and said to Tong Shuitao, "It just so happens that your mother has just given birth. There are some things pregnant women need to pay attention to. Let aunt ask her." Gu Yundong really did not know what pregnant women should pay attention to, but Madame Jiang had 2 children, and was very experienced. However, Chang Yaya's health was indeed not good. Not only could she not overwork herself, but she also needed to eat something good. As she thought about it, she walked to the study and took a brush and paper to record it down. She planned to buy something in the county city another day. Just as she finished writing, she heard Chang Yaya wake up. Gu Yundong looked over and saw Chang Yaya and Gu Xiaoxi hugging each other and crying tears of joy. Chang Yaya felt an unprecedented joy well up in her heart. When she was young, she was despised by her biological grandmother. After her reputation was completely ruined, she thought that she might be alone in the future, and it would be impossible for her to get married again. Unexpectedly, a calamity had caused her to meet Gu Xiaoxi. It was a blessing in disguise that she had found such a husband who doted on her. The Gu family was even easier to get along with. They were afraid that she would have no relatives by her side alone, so they took special care of her. She was about to have her own house and home. Initially, they thought that they couldn't be happier. They did not expect their child to arrive so quickly. Chang Yaya felt that if all the hardships she had suffered in the past 16 years could be exchanged for her current happy life, it would be worth it. Shao Qingyuan endured it and said, "She's pregnant. It's best not to have too many emotional fluctuations. She just needs to cry." Gu Xiaoxi came back to her senses and quickly let go of Chang Yaya to wipe her tears. Yes. Don't cry anymore. This is a good thing. You're not in good health to begin with. I'll brew some pregnancy stabilizing medicine for you later. You have to drink it obediently. Don't go to the new house. With me around, there will definitely be no problem." Chang Yaya nodded obediently. Gu Xiaoxi touched her stomach and became excited again. "Oh right, I have to send a letter to my eldest sister and second brother. They'll definitely be very happy. They might even return to Yongfu village." Gu Yundong thought that eldest Aunt Gu would be back, but his father would be late. Still, looking at the silly Gu Xiaoxi, Gu Yundong could only remind him, "Uncle, have you forgotten something else?" Gu Xiaoxi was stunned. Forgotten something? He lowered his head and thought about it. He told Chang Yaya to have a good rest and recuperate well. He told his eldest sister and second brother the good news, and reminded himself to spend more time with his wife. Later, he had to ask Qingyuan what she should eat, and ask the Jiang family about other things he needed to pay attention to. Other than these few points, what else was there? He raised his head and looked at Gu Yundong in a daze. Chapter 1172. Celebration. Gu Yundong sniggered in her heart. "So you're stupid now that your wife is pregnant?" She sighed and said, "It's your wedding." Gu Xiaoxi and Chang Yaya were stunned at the same time, and the smiles on their faces instantly disappeared. Wedding? Yes. Wedding. Since Chang Yaya was pregnant, she could not wait until the end of August to hold the banquet. Although they had already signed the marriage contract and were officially husband and wife, in the eyes of others, the marriage contract did not count at all. They had to hold the wedding banquet before they could be considered married. If she waited until the end of August and Chang Yaya's belly became big, who knew how much gossip she would suffer? It would not be a big problem if they were to hold a banquet now and wait for the child to be born. Gu Xiaoxi couldn't care less anymore and hurriedly nodded. Then let's hold the wedding first. Independent Illinois choose a good day this month. As he spoke, he stood up and squatted back down halfway. But I haven't prepared anything. The wedding dress is still. He looked like he was at a loss. Chang Yaya grabbed his hand and smiled gently. It's okay. We don't know many people here to begin with. We can just set up 2 or 3 tables. There's still time for the wedding dress. I'm actually already halfway done. Chang Yaya knew how to do needlework. Although she was not as good as Shen Sitian, she had made the wedding dress herself. From the first day she decided to set up the wine. She had already started sewing happily. Gu Xiaoxi nodded repeatedly. He would agree to anything she said. Gu Yundong saw that they were discussing, so there was not much of a problem. Next, it was time to decide on the date of their wedding. It was not far away. Half a month later, Gu Yundong wrote a letter and asked Chen Jinbao and the others to bring it to the prefectural city for eldest aunt and her parents. As expected, the next day, Gu Dafeng carried her luggage and rushed back with the delivery team. It wouldn't be too late for Gu Dajiang to come back a few days before their wedding. As soon as Gu Dafeng arrived, she instructed Gu Xiaoxi, get Shao Gao and the rest to build your room first. This house is already more than halfway up. In the next half a month, they'll specially build your room. You'll definitely be able to live there before you get married. The wedding had to be held in their own house. If it was in the Gu family, it would be terrible. Originally, Gu Xiaoxi and Gu Dafeng's houses were built together. Both families were already halfway up. In this day and age, there was no such thing as formaldehyde. After drying it for 2 days, one could live there. It was already May and June, and the sun was already very strong. It was not a big problem. However, Chang Yaya was pregnant, so it was naturally better for her to stay in the Gu family. They would only stay in their new house for a while on the day of the wedding. Gu Xiaoxi immediately agreed. He turned around and started building the house with Shao Gao. With more than 10 people working together, and because the house was not very big, the beam would be installed in a few days. After 2 days of drying, it was time to decorate the new house. It just so happened that Chang Yaya's health had improved a little, so she planned to go to the county city with Gu Yundong to buy things. After all, she was getting married. There were some things that she needed to take a look at herself. Gu Yundong brought her and Gu Dafeng to the county city. She and Chang Yaya did not know much, and many things were handled by Gu Dafeng. It was just that when she bought stuff, she would ask for their opinions and see which one they liked. After walking around for half a circle, Gu Yundong was worried that Chang Yaya would be tired, so she wanted to find a tea house to rest. Unexpectedly, just as she got Gu Dafeng and Chang Yaya into the carriage, she saw a familiar figure from the corner of her eye. Chapter 1173. Affair? Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and said to Tong Shuitao, take my eldest aunt and little aunt to the tea house to rest first. Order something to eat. I'll be back soon. As she spoke, she quietly followed the figure. When Gu Dafeng and Chang Yaya stuck their heads out, they only had time to see her back. Gu Yundong saw Zhang Jiao. In the past, she would not have cared about Zhang Jiao's appearance. However, the Zhang family wanted to slander her if their marriage was cancelled. She felt disgusted, so she decided to let her and Lu Wei break off the engagement as soon as possible. Gu Yundong didn't know where Zhang Jiao was going. She didn't even bring a maid with her. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. If she did something shameful, Lu Wei might have evidence to break off the engagement with the Lu family. She was a little excited just thinking about it. Gu Yundong followed Zhang Jiao silently, her heart pounding. Zhang Jiao did not notice anything amiss. She was very calm except for the fact that she did not have a maidservant with her. Not long after, Zhang Jiao stopped and walked into a restaurant. Gu Yundong looked up. Wasn't this Jinxiu restaurant? As soon as Zhang Jiao entered, Gu Yundong followed. The manager of the restaurant was especially familiar with her. When he saw her coming, he immediately wanted to greet her. Gu Yundong raised her hand and pressed it gently. The shopkeeper immediately understood and asked in a low voice, Miss Gu, are you here for something? Where did that lady go? Gu Yundong looked around but did not see Zhang Jiao. She was probably not in the lobby downstairs. As expected, the shopkeeper pointed upstairs and said, "In room 2. Room 2. What a pity. It's not the wing where I could have overheard the conversation last time." Gu Yundong sighed inwardly. She looked upstairs and continued to ask the shopkeeper, "Was there someone in that room?" "Yes, young Master Zhang is also inside." Gu Yundong's expression changed slightly. Zhang Hao was also here? All right, they had an affair and came to her fiancé's restaurant. Wasn't he too disrespectful? He was simply detestable. When the shopkeeper saw her unfriendly expression, he felt uneasy and asked softly, "Miss Gu, is there a problem?" Gu Yundong waved his hand. "No, I'll go up and take a look." The shopkeeper wanted to say something but hesitated. From Lady Gu's expression, tone, and actions, could it be that she wanted to eavesdrop on others again? Sigh. How could a good girl have such a fetish? He had to find an opportunity to talk to the boss and ask him to persuade Miss Gu. Otherwise, if she developed the habit of eavesdropping on others at the Jinxiu restaurant in the future, their business would be ruined. However, Gu Yundong had already gone upstairs and was standing at the staircase. She frowned as she looked at the second room. What should she do? She did not know what was going on inside. It would be great if they could hug each other and do something indecent. That way, they would be caught red-handed. Gu Yundong took 2 steps at the staircase. When she saw the waiter serve the food, she almost reached out to stop him. However, on second thought, Zhang Hao and his sister had seen her before. Even if she disguised herself as a waiter, she would be recognized immediately. If she couldn't go in, she couldn't play the recording pen. Therefore, she could only watch as the waiter pushed open the door of the room. After bringing the food in, he came out, closed the door, and went downstairs. But just now, when Gu Yundong looked into the room, she did not see anything unusual about their actions. Chapter 1174. Very strange siblings. Gu Yundong secretly felt that it was a pity. She frowned and was at a loss. However, just as she was about to climb up to the roof to eavesdrop, the door to the second room actually opened. Gu Yundong immediately turned around and quickly hid behind a pillar. Sure enough, Zhang Hao and Zhang Jiao came out at the same time. Zhang Jiao said proudly, "Brother, don't think that treating me to a meal is enough as an apology." All right. When we get back, I'll give you another gift, all right?" Zhang Jiao snorted. "That's more like it." As they spoke, they went downstairs one after another. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes. She had not noticed it last time. Now that she knew that they had that kind of relationship, looking at their actions, they were really not as simple as being siblings. Their actions were more flirtatious. The problem was if they were intimate, so be it. Why did they have to come to Jinxiu restaurant? Who were they trying to annoy? After watching the siblings leave the restaurant, Gu Yundong hesitated for a moment before entering room number 2. The moment she entered, the first thing she saw was the table of dishes. That's right. They came out not long after the dishes were served. That was strange. What was the point of ordering food and not eating it? Could it be that they came to the restaurant to talk? But in such a short period of time, they could not say much. It was very strange. Very strange. Gu Yundong glanced at the dishes on the table, but could not see anything. She then looked around the entire room and felt that there was nothing unusual. It was a very ordinary room. Gu Yundong was observing when footsteps suddenly came from outside. She subconsciously wanted to hide, but after looking around, she couldn't find a place to hide. In the end, she bent down and went under the table, flipping the tablecloth down. As soon as she put it down, she spat at herself in frustration. Why was she hiding? It was impossible for the Zhang siblings to be back. What was there to be afraid of? Sure enough, the footsteps quickly entered the door. Immediately after, the waiter's suspicious voice sounded. They didn't eat much on this table. What a waste. Before he could finish speaking, another waiter seemed to come in and said with a smile, "It doesn't matter. It's better if they don't eat it. Let us eat it. Look at this chicken. It hasn't been touched at all. It was personally cooked by the master. Let's split it half each. We can bring it home at night and heat it up for the family at home to try." That's true. Gu Yundong hid under the table. Should she go out or not? It seemed very awkward to go out. The two young men had just discussed bringing the leftovers home, but they did not expect her to hear them. And how could she, Gu Yundong, who was beautiful and intelligent and had the demeanor of a big sister in front of Lu Wei, be seen under the table? If Lu Wei found out, wouldn't he laugh at her? At the thought of this, Gu Yundong calmly squatted under the table. She planned to come out after the two of them packed up and left. The two of them were very fast. Each of them carried out a tray. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. Just as they were about to come out of the door, a voice came from the door again. Bring me a pot of tea. The person outside the door seemed to want to enter this room, and was standing at the door talking to the waiter who went out. The waiter nodded hurriedly. Please wait a moment. I'll change the tablecloth and serve tea for you later. Gu Yundong's heart skipped a beat. Damn it, you still want to change the tablecloth? Wouldn't she be exposed? Chapter 1175. Problem. Gu Yundong was anxious. Unexpectedly, the next moment, she heard the customer say, No need to change. I'm thirsty. Hurry up and serve me a pot of tea. Gu Yundong was silent for a moment. Very good. I like this idea, but it's a little sloppy. However, why did this voice sound so familiar? Gu Yundong wanted to lift the tablecloth and look outside, but that person had already entered. He sat on the stool. Gu Yundong lowered her head and could only see his feet. The waiter outside the door left in a hurry. Not long after, he came in with a pot of tea. Sir, your tea. What would you like to order? That person waved his hand. I'm waiting for someone. It won't be too late to order when my friend arrives. All right, take your time. If you need anything, just let me know. Okay, you can leave. The waiter left and the door closed. Only Gu Yundong and the customer were left in the huge room. Gu Yundong's legs were a little numb from squatting. She wanted to move but did not dare to. However, her mind was racing. Who was this person? The voice was really familiar. She must have heard it before. Before she could figure it out, this person suddenly put down his teacup, stood up, and walked to the side. Gu Yundong immediately held her breath. That person seemed to have walked to the door, and was leaning against it to listen to the commotion outside. Then he gently locked the door. With a click, Gu Yundong suddenly tensed up. What was this person trying to do? Just as she was thinking this, she saw that person walk to the table again. After drinking a glass of water, he turned around again. Gu Yundong could only see his feet and determine if his back was facing her. Soon, the pair of feet walked to the wall. From the direction of the shoes, the man was facing away from him. She didn't know what he was doing, but he started rustling against the wall. Gu Yundong endured it and finally lifted the tablecloth gently to look at that person. Gu Yundong only saw a back view, but she did not recognize who it was. However, she saw this person's actions clearly. He actually flipped over a calligraphy painting hanging on the wall and gently scraped it with a dagger. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes. Was there something wrong with that calligraphy painting? However, right after that, she saw a slender piece of paper fall to the ground lightly. That person bent down. Gu Yundong was shocked. She quickly flipped the tablecloth over and quickly took out a mask from her space to cover herself. She stared at the tablecloth warily. Fortunately, that person did not notice her movements. He quickly picked up the note on the ground and walked to the table to read it. Gu Yundong did not dare to move. She only pricked up her ears to listen for movement. Unfortunately, nothing happened. After drinking the last cup of tea, that person stood up and opened the door of the room. The waiter quickly came over. Customer, do you want to order? No need. Looks like my friend won't be coming. Erase the money for the tea. That person threw a small piece of silver to the waiter and left in a hurry. The waiter scratched his head and could only come in to clean up the table. Unexpectedly, just as he picked up the teapot, a figure suddenly rolled out from under the table. The waiter was shocked and almost screamed. Gu Yundong quickly jumped up and covered his mouth. Miss Gu? The waiter was shocked. Why are you here? When did you hide under the table? Chapter 1176. A woman who had an affair? Gu Yundong was anxious about the person who left, so he glared at the waiter and said, You didn't see anything just now, did you hear that? If you dare to say that you saw me, I'll get Lu Wei to fire you, and let you go home to eat your own food." Then she left in a hurry. The waiter looked like he wanted to cry but had no tears. He would not tell anyone. His mouth was very tight. Previously, he had discovered that Miss Gu was eavesdropping on others, so he had told the shopkeeper. Such a sincere, kind, and honest person was actually threatened by Miss Gu. He felt wronged. Gu Yundong had already rushed downstairs and left the restaurant. She did not even see the shopkeeper greet her. As expected, that person had not gone far. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. That person's footsteps were steady, and he did not seem to be in a hurry to do anything after receiving the note. He was very calm. When the other party turned the corner, Gu Yundong finally saw his face clearly. She couldn't help but narrow her eyes. It was him? The middle-aged man who had followed Tao Xing back then. A member of the Tao family? Gu Yundong pursed her lips tightly. The Tao family? The Zhang family? Tao Xing Master Tao, Zhang Hao Zhang Jiao. She suddenly recalled what Lu Wei had said to her. According to old Master Liu's investigation, Zhang Jiao wanted to marry Tao Yen back then, but it failed. Gu Yundong could not figure it out, and could only follow behind the middle-aged man. However, when they passed by the tea house, she suddenly heard a voice coming from upstairs. She looked up and saw Tong Shuitao, who was drinking tea with Gu Dafeng and Chang Yaya on the second floor, greeting her. Gu Yundong immediately pressed her hand down. Tong Shuitao immediately understood and quickly turned around to go downstairs. Gu Yundong did not stop. She was still following behind the middle-aged man. Tong Shuitao ran a few steps before catching up to her. "Miss, what are you doing?" "I'm going to investigate something. Send my eldest aunt and little aunt back later. I'll go home myself. Don't worry about me." "Investigate something?" Tong Shuitao was eager to try, her eyes sparkling. "Miss, do you need my help? You're helping me by sending eldest aunt and little aunt back." Gu Yundong waved her hand. "All right, let's go." Oh. Although Tong Shuitao was a little disappointed, she still obediently turned around and returned to the tea house. However, before she left, she still glanced at the middle-aged man who was being followed by her Mississippi. At that moment, the middle-aged man entered a shop. Gu Yundong looked up at the shop sign. It was a grocery store. The middle-aged man only bought a paper bag and a pot of wine before coming out. He did not waste any time and quickly walked forward. Gu Yundong followed him for a short distance before entering an alley. She watched as the middle-aged man knocked on one of the courtyards. The courtyard door opened, and a woman came out. When the woman saw the middle-aged man, she was stunned for a moment. Gu Yundong didn't know what the middle-aged man had said, but the woman's expression changed slightly. She immediately pulled him in with a smile, as if she was a woman waiting for her husband to return home. It was as if she was a woman who had an affair with someone. But Gu Yundong could clearly see that the moment the woman opened the door, the expression on her face was a little unfamiliar. Perhaps she didn't know the middle-aged man. It was only after the middle-aged man said something that she instantly changed her attitude. Gu Yundong looked up at the courtyard wall. It was a pity that she probably could not climb over it. Chapter 1177. The things in the cellar. Fortunately, not long after, the middle-aged man and the woman came out. Gu Yundong quickly dodged to the side and lowered her head to wait for the two of them to leave. As soon as the two of them left, Gu Yundong stared at the courtyard door with burning eyes. After hesitating for a moment, she still hurried towards the courtyard. The door was locked. Gu Yundong glanced at it. It seemed that she still had to climb over the wall. She walked around half a circle and found a corner, where no one was going in or out. She raised her foot and flipped in. As soon as she landed, her entire body tensed up. The courtyard was quiet. There was no movement at all. There were no flowers or vegetables in the courtyard. There were no chickens or ducks. It was clean. Gu Yundong walked inside and entered the central room. The central room was more lively. On the table in front of her was the wine pot and paper bag that the middle-aged man had brought over. There was also a cup of tea on the table. There were not many things in the entire house. After Gu Yundong finished looking at the central room, she went to the left wing. Other than the bed and cabinet, there were 2 boxes in the room. Other than that, there was nothing special. It was the same in the right wing. There were only a few pieces of the woman's clothes and daily necessities. Gu Yundong went to the kitchen again. The kitchen looked like someone had cooked before. There were 2 dishes on the table, but they were already cold. After walking around, there was nothing special about it. But why did that middle-aged man come in? He had never opened the wine pot and paper bag he carried. In this short period of time, it was not enough for him to be intimate with that woman. He must have come here for a reason. Gu Yundong suddenly recalled how he behaved at the Jinxiu restaurant. He had also ordered a pot of tea in a hurry, and did not even order anything. In the end, he only wanted to enter the second room to get the note. He left after getting it. It should be the same here. He came in for such a short time and left, probably to get something. Gu Yundong's gaze wandered around the kitchen again, and finally landed on the cupboard. She opened the cupboard. It was just a few sets of cutlery. However, just as she was about to close the cupboard, she suddenly realized that there was a partition on the ground beside the cupboard. This is a cellar? Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. She squatted down and opened the cellar door. She looked inside and after confirming that there was no danger, she went down. She widened her eyes in shock. This cellar was very big, even bigger than the 2 rooms above combined. At this moment, the cellar was filled with many things. Gu Yundong hurried forward and untied one of the bags. Rice. She walked to the side and untied another bag. Flour. Although they were not particularly good rice and flour but all miscellaneous grains, they were still good food. It was quite a lot. Gu Yundong pursed his lips and looked at the dozen big boxes beside her. She opened one of them and suddenly gasped. Silver. There was rice, flour, and silver, but they had to be placed in the cellar. Moreover, it was so mysterious and sneaky. It would be strange if there were no plots. Especially since the Tao family was involved, things might get out of hand. Gu Yundong quickly closed the boxes and tied the bags of grains again. Then, she left and walked towards the exit of the cellar. Unexpectedly, just as she reached the top of the stairs, she heard footsteps outside. They were very close and were directly at the kitchen door. Gu Yundong's expression changed drastically. It was impossible to leave this place now. Chapter 1178. Gu Yundong carried away making a prompt decision. Gu Yundong returned to the cellar and closed the door. She walked to a large box near the wall, opened it, and put all the silver inside into her spatial storage. Then she crawled in. As soon as the box was closed, the cellar door was pulled open. Then footsteps could be heard. Gu Yundong secretly left a small gap to see who was outside. Unfortunately, this position was not good. It was just a crack and things could not be seen at all. Fortunately, she could hear voices. There should be 2 people. One of them was the middle-aged man, but the woman from before was not around. The things are all here. Take a look. This was the middle-aged man's voice. His tone was somewhat fawning, as if he was treating Master Tao. Soon, an even deeper voice sounded. Not a lot. This voice did not belong to Master Tao. The middle-aged man explained, recently, due to the cowpox vaccination, the county has been especially strict. It's already not bad to be able to get these. Don't worry, we'll continue to prepare. Yeah. Seeing that he didn't say anything else, the middle-aged man heaved a sigh of relief. When will you move them away? Right now. Some of them first. The man said as he untied the cloth bag and began to examine it. Gu Yundong's heart tightened when she saw him approaching. She did not dare to leave any gaps and just curled up in the box. However, the words she heard before the box was closed made her a little worried. Move some of them first? Hopefully they wouldn't reach her box. The middle-aged man said, All right, then I'll leave first. I'll leave this to you. Go out and explain to the people outside. Get someone to drive the carriage to the back door. Yes. Gu Yundong could not hear the rest of the sentence clearly. She did not know if the 2 people outside had left. She could only wait quietly in the box. However, the box was sealed. If one stayed for too long, they would lack oxygen, making it difficult to breathe. If this continued, she might not be able to hold it in anymore and open the box. Gu Yundong frowned. She closed her eyes and started rummaging in her space. After searching for a while, she saw the oxygen bags in the corner. She was instantly delighted and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Previously, When she was hoarding medicine in her space, she would throw everything into her space. There were many portable oxygen tanks and bags used to deal with high-altitude reactions. They were finally useful now. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief and tied the oxygen bag. Soon, there was a huge commotion outside. It seemed that several people had come. Gu Yundong frowned. Someone was helping them? It seemed like they were really preparing to transport these things out. She thought for a moment, and took out a portion of the silver she had stored in the space. It wouldn't be good if they moved to this box and realized that it was too light, and became suspicious. However, what she was afraid of came true. Gu Yundong quickly realized that the 2 boxes in front of her had been moved away. Immediately after, someone picked up the big box she was in. Gu Yundong wanted to cry. It was really an unlucky day. She had to be on tenterhooks wherever she went. The feeling under her body suddenly lightened. She knew that the box she was in had been moved out. Gu Yundong did not dare to move, afraid that someone would accidentally drop the box. She felt movement up the stairs. They must have left the cellar. Then, they walked forward unsteadily. In the end, the 2 of them lifted the box and carried it to the carriage. Chapter 1179. Sleeping out in the wild. Gu Yundong's head was hit, and she almost cried out. After she recovered, she let out a soft breath. They should be outside now. She didn't know if anyone was guarding this place. Gu Yundong tried to hold it in, but she could not. She quietly pushed up the box, revealing a crack to look outside. To her relief, the box was placed in the carriage. And there was no one in the carriage. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief and opened the lid even more. Then, she heard voices coming from outside the carriage. How many more are there? Gu Yundong was shocked and almost closed the lid again. This was the voice that had spoken to the middle-aged man just now. She finally understood that if she didn't want to expose herself, she couldn't go out at this time. However, she did not know where these things were transported to. What if? Gu Yundong struggled internally for a moment. In the end, she decided not to alert the enemy. She took out a packet of medicinal powder from her space. This medicinal powder was developed by Shao Qingyuan, and had the effect of calming the mind and increasing the fragrance. The fragrance was mild, but it was enough for Big Black to keep track of. Gu Yundong pushed the lid open a little and listened. The voice was on the left. She opened the medicine bag and scattered the powder out of the window on the right. After emptying a bag, she scattered some in the corner of the carriage. Just as she retracted her hand, she heard the person outside say, "Why is there a fragrance?" Gu Yundong's heart skipped a beat. Damn it, why don't you get rhinitis? How can you smell it when it's so faint? Fortunately, another voice quickly sounded. This bag is filled with medicinal herbs. It should be emitted from here. Okay. That person nodded and did not say anything else. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. She closed the box and retied the oxygen bag. Medicinal herbs. She didn't have the time to see them. Soon, she felt the carriage move, as if it had already begun its journey. Gu Yundong reckoned that these people might pretend to be merchants and leave the city gate. The food, gold, and silver in the cellar were not all transported. Unfortunately, she couldn't hear what was going on outside. She huddled in the box, hugging the oxygen bag as she sauntered forward. After an unknown period of time, Gu Yundong could feel that the speed had suddenly increased. They should have left the city. She was a little anxious. Fortunately, there were many goods in the car. No matter how fast it was, it could not be too fast. After a long time, Gu Yundong felt hungry. She took some food from the space and drank some water before continuing to travel unsteadily. The carriage did not stop at all. After a moment of silence, Gu Yundong realized that there was probably no one in the carriage. Only 2 people were driving on the shaft outside. Therefore, she would occasionally open the lid a little to let in some air and sprinkle some medicinal powder. Fortunately, she had brought a lot of medicinal powder with her, so it was convenient to store them in her space. The box she was in was also moved out later, so it was piled on top of another box. There was nothing above her head, so it was not troublesome to push open the lid. She just couldn't stretch her body, and her back hurt terribly. Gradually, the sky began to darken. Gu Yundong frowned. Why didn't the carriage stop? Just as she thought this, The carriage suddenly stopped. Gu Yundong quickly closed the box again, leaving a small gap. She vaguely heard someone outside say, "Eat something first. Well, sleep here overnight. Everyone be vigilant." Gu Yundong's face lit up. It was good to sleep in the open. Chapter 1180. Drugged. Soon someone shouted as they got into the carriage to get pots, bowls, food and other things. Gu Yundong hid in the box and did not move. She waited until there was no movement outside before quietly opening a crack. The commotion outside lasted for a while before it quietened down. Gu Yundong vaguely heard someone instruct others. "The two of you will keep watch tonight. Be careful and don't fall asleep." "Yes, sir," two figures answered. Then there was another rustling sound. Not long after, it was completely quiet outside. Gu Yundong exhaled slightly and listened carefully for a while before completely opening the lid of the box. He quietly lifted a corner of the carriage curtain and looked outside. The light on the left was a little bright. Gu Yundong looked at a fire not far away. These people were all men and were not particular. They directly spread some hay, or hide beside the fire, and lay down to sleep. There were not many people, about 5 of them. At this moment, their snores were already deafening and they were sleeping very soundly. There were 2 other people not far away. They should be on night watch tonight. What Gu Yundong found troublesome was that the 2 of them had been walking around the carriages. At this moment, she also saw clearly that other than the carriage she was in now, there was another carriage. The rest were 3 carts with food and medicinal herbs. She let go and turned her head to the window to her right. This side was much darker. Not far away, it seemed to be a forest. The branches were indistinct under the wind, and it was a little scary. After checking the environment, Gu Yundong looked away and frowned in thought. If she wanted to go out, she had to at least defeat these 2 people. Even if she couldn't put down 2 of them, she had to deal with one. But how could she do this without arousing their suspicion? Gu Yundong stayed in the carriage for a long time, but could not figure it out. Just as she was about to fall asleep, a voice suddenly came from outside. "I'm a little hungry. There's still some dried meat in the car. Oh, bring it down. Let's eat together." "That dried meat is very fishy. I don't like it. Go get it yourself." Gu Yundong instantly perked up. Her eyes darted around and finally landed on the pile of food in the carriage. Most of the food they ate was placed on this carriage. They had taken a portion previously, and some were still placed here. She quickly saw the dried meat. She immediately took out the laxative from her space and sprinkled it on it. Then, she quickly curled up and closed the lid. As soon as the lid was closed, the curtain of the carriage was opened. A man took 2 large pieces of dried meat and went out again. Fortunately, it was dark. The man did not notice that the dried meat had been sprinkled with powder. He picked it up and ate it in big mouthfuls. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief, revealing a slit. She could vaguely hear the voices of the people outside. "Are you really not eating it? This thing is not easy to get. It's already dried meat and doesn't have any taste. Eat your food. A look around." Gu Yundong waited quietly. Sure enough, not long after, that person suddenly grunted and pulled the other person over. "My stomach hurts. Oh, go over there to take care of it. You watch over here first." "Did you eat something bad?" "Probably." "Oh my, I can't take it anymore. Oh, go into the forest first." That person ran away quickly. The other person shook his head and placed the dried mutton back into the carriage to continue his night duty. Source: Com, updated by Novlove. Com if you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1181. Shao Qingyuan is here. Gu Yundong took this chance to climb out of the box silently. She wiped the laxative powder in the corner of the box and put the dried mutton that was stained with powder in her space. Then, she carefully pulled a corner of the curtain. Her gaze landed on the man on night duty. When he walked with his back facing her, and her vision was blocked, she agilely got down from the carriage. The person turned his head quickly. Gu Yundong hurriedly lowered her body and slowly moved backwards. However, the person walked back. Gu Yundong's heart sank. She hurriedly lowered her body and shrunk to the side of the horse carriage. As they got closer, Gu Yundong shrunk smaller and smaller. Fortunately, the sky was dark, so the person didn't realize that there was another person hiding on the other side of the carriage. He walked over. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief and walked towards the handcart in front. It was as if she was walking in circles with the person. When the person reached the end, Gu Yundong finally found an opportunity to sneak into the forest. She knew that there was another person in the forest, so she walked in the opposite direction. Gu Yundong finally heaved a sigh of relief after she left this area. She's finally out. She started walking back. After a long distance, she stopped. Since she was already here, Gu Yundong wanted to figure out their destination. If not, she would have suffered for nothing. Actually, it was much more convenient to go directly in the horse carriage. She wouldn't need to walk at all. However, the box was uncomfortable. Eating and sleeping were alright, but a person had to answer nature's call, right? Gu Yundong found a rock and sat down. She ate some food and drank some water. She finally felt at ease. She wondered how her family was. Her eldest aunt and uncle would definitely be worried. However, with brother Shao around, he should be able to pacify them. However, she didn't know that Shao Qingyuan was riding his horse over hurriedly. In front of the horse, Big Black was rubbing its nose and trotting forward. Big Black was agile and smart. However, it had been injured before, so its legs were inconvenient. Thus, after running for some distance, Shao Qingyuan would carry him on his horse. He didn't set off too late. After chasing for some time, he got closer and closer. Gu Yundong soon heard the sound of horse hooves. It was soft, but it was exceptionally obvious in the silent night. She immediately stood up from the rock and ran to the bushes behind to hide. They sounded like two horses. She wondered if they were related to the group of people in front. Just as she was thinking about this, the sound of horse hooves got closer. Then, they suddenly stopped not far away from her. Gu Yundong clenched her fists slightly. She had already prepared the arrow in her hand. Shao Qingyuan, who was sitting on his horse, could only see the bushes moving slightly. It was as if someone was lying in ambush. He immediately took the bow behind his back and pulled the bow. He aimed at the pitch-black area. "Come out." His voice was cold. Gu Yundong, who was in the bushes, was stunned. She immediately put the arrow away and stood up happily. "Brother Shao." A smile appeared at the edge of Shao Qingyuan's lips. He put down his bow and leaped down from his horse. Then he ran towards her with large strides. "Yundong, are you all right?" Shao Qingyuan held her hand nervously and touched her face. He then looked at her carefully. After confirming that she wasn't injured, he pulled her into his arms. Source: Com. Updated by Novlove. Com. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1182. Block his mouth. Gu Yundong stretched out her hand and hugged his waist tightly. "I'm fine. I'm fine." Shao Qingyuan's anxious heart finally calmed down when he saw her. He couldn't control himself and patted her perky butt. He frowned and said, "Why are you taking the risk alone again? Can't you come back and tell me first? I will accompany you wherever you want to go. If you meet danger when you're alone, I will regret it." Gu Yundong twisted her body awkwardly. She raised her head and snorted. "I didn't want to take any risk. The situation was a little complicated. I didn't have the chance to escape." She really wanted to go out and look for Qingyuan after seeing the things in the basement. Then, she didn't care about this matter anymore. But when she was thinking of going out, the people outside came in. She could only hide in the alley and get carried into the horse carriage before coming here. Gu Yundong raised her head. She saw that he still had lingering fears and felt a little guilty. She touched his face. "I'm sorry. I will discuss it with you immediately in the future. I won't let you worry." Shao Qingyuan lowered his eyes and sighed secretly. He pressed her head against his chest and said in a hoarse voice, "If there's a next time, you will be grounded for half a year." Grounded? This was too cruel. Gu Yundong pouted. Just when she was about to refute, a shadow fell on her head. Shao Qingyuan bit the edge of her lips and snorted. "You seem unconvinced." He gave her a "you can say it if you're unconvinced, but let's see if he'll let you talk" look. Gu Yundong immediately shook her head. "I'm not." Shao Qingyuan felt a little regretful. Then he lowered his head and kissed her unwillingly. He paused and kissed her again. Gu Yundong widened her eyes in surprise. I've already said that I'm convinced. Why are you still blocking my mouth? Shao Qingyuan wasn't done yet. However, the hem of his clothes got pulled, and he heard a whimper beside his ear. He and Gu Yundong lowered their heads at the same time, and saw Big Black staring at him fiercely. Gu Yundong burst out laughing. She squatted down and touched Big Black's big head. She asked, "Did you bring Big Black to find me?" "Okay." Shao Qingyuan was unhappy with Big Black. This big fellow didn't realize who brought him up the mountain and into the wilderness for fun. Yet it was a traitor at this crucial moment. What a heartless fellow. Tong Shuitao came to look for me after she went back. She said that you were following a middle-aged man who might be a bad person. I brought Big Black to the city and searched the area Tong Shuitao told me about. I found the powder you left behind and brought Wind Chaser along with me. Shao Qingyuan pointed at the two horses behind him. He didn't drive a horse carriage. It was more convenient for him to ride a horse. Who's that middle-aged man? Why did you leave the city? Gu Yundong pulled him to a rock at the side and sat him down. She knew that he had rushed over in a hurry the moment he heard her news. He must have never rested or eaten along the way. Thus, she pretended to take out a cloth bag from the bushes and passed the buns, pastries, and water bags over. Eat something first. I'll explain to you slowly. I took them from their carriage when I escaped. Eat them quickly. Big Black can eat some too. She took some dried meat and placed it in front of Big Black. The big guy rubbed his chin against her palm and started eating happily. Shao Qingyuan squinted slightly as he looked at the food in her hand. Source: Com, updated by Novlove. Com if you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1183. Everything makes sense. Did she manage to get the food from their carriage? However, if a normal person wanted to escape, they would focus all their energy on running. How could they divert their attention to search for food? There were so many items. If she brought them along when she ran away, they would become a burden easily. They might drag her down and expose her location. Shao Qingyuan knew that Gu Yundong had a secret. He knew it when the 4 jars of wine disappeared and reappeared on the way back to the Tao family. But if Yundong didn't want to tell him, he would pretend that he didn't know. Shao Qingyuan smiled. He took out a warm bun and stuffed it in his mouth. Gu Yundong lowered her head slightly and pursed her lips tightly. She continued feeding Big Black. After Big Black finished eating, she raised her head and told him about her encounter with Zhang Jiao and the middle-aged man. Shao Qingyuan listened and ate at the same time. His expression turned more and more serious. After Gu Yundong finished speaking, she couldn't help but guess. Do you think the Tao family hasn't made any moves recently because the Zhang family is helping them? It's possible. Qin Wenzheng sent someone to keep an eye on the Tao family, but he didn't expect the Zhang family to be the one he should pay attention to. These two families are in cahoots. Gu Yundong rubbed Big Black's head and nodded. Also, according to Uncle Liu's investigation, the Zhang family wanted to marry into the Tao family at first. They wanted Zhang Jiaojiao to marry Tao Yan. Now that I think about it, it makes sense. Zhang Jiaojiao and Zhang Hao have an ambiguous relationship. If she marries Tao Yan will get betrayed by his wife again. He won't even have the face to go out after getting cheated on. Master Tao will then suppress him again, and everything will go according to plan. Unfortunately, Tao Yan used some method and the marriage didn't happen. That was why the Zhang family had their eyes on the Lu family. The Lu family had a powerful background in the capital, and their background was the emperor's trust. If the Tao family was behind all this, it made sense. Everything made sense. Did you say that there's a lot of food, herbs, and silver in the basement? Gu Yundong nodded. Yes. Did you see any weapons? Not really. Gu Yundong noticed his serious expression and asked in a soft voice. Do you suspect that they are preparing to rebel? The last word was very soft. Gu Yundong had no choice but to think this way. Only troops raised privately would need to transport large amounts of rations secretly. It looked like they had to make this trip and figure out where those people were transporting the items to. The current emperor was a wise one. She had a deep relationship with Qingyuan. Who knew if she would become a thorn in other people's eyes if the emperor was changed? There were some things she had to get involved in. After agreeing with Shao Qingyuan, Gu Yundong relied on him to rest temporarily. After dawn, the two of them led their horses and followed behind. Before Gu Yundong left, she tampered with the carriage. Hence, with Big Black's help, she had no problem tracking them. After following them for 2 days, the leader, Big Black, went straight up the mountain. Up the mountain? Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan exchanged glances with each other and followed it hurriedly. The journey was full of twists and turns. It was really difficult. The mountain got steeper and steeper. If Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan didn't run deep into the mountain often, they might have lost their way here. After walking for a day, they finally found traces of someone in front. They had caught up with the group of people. The group of people stopped at a slightly flatter area. Someone ran over excitedly. "You're back." Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan raised their heads. The next instant their expressions changed. Why is he here? Source: Com. Updated by Novlove. Com. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1184. Do you still want to go home? Qin Shu. This person was Qin Shu. Shouldn't he be living a good life in that paradise in Qingyuan village? Why is he here? What's more, he's hanging out with these people. Gu Yundong furrowed her brows furiously. In her impression, Qin Shu was still the warm and hospitable young man who took out all the food he had to welcome them when they came out of the mountains. She gave him money, but he didn't accept it. In the end, he used it to buy food and cloth to distribute to the uncles and aunties in the village. Why was this young man, who had never been to the county city and was already excited when he brought them to town, here? Shao Qingyuan held her hand gently and said in a low voice, "Let's wait and see." Gu Yundong nodded. She pursed her lips and looked at the young man. Qin Shu was helping to move the items. As he moved the items, he asked, "Brother son, why did you buy so much food this time? We still have a lot here. It's enough to eat." Brother son was the leader who brought the cargo back. He glanced at the young man expressionlessly. "Do your work if I ask you to. Why are you talking so much?" The young man retracted his smile and shrunk his neck. "Oh." Then, he went to carry the food obediently. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan exchanged glances with each other. They stared at Qin Shu as he carried the bag and walked in. After some time, he hurried out and carried the next sack. When brother son disappeared, the other person beside Qin Shu bumped into him and said, "You know that brother son has a bad temper, and why do you have to speak to him?" Qin Shu was carrying a bag on his shoulder. He sighed when he heard this and said, "I just wanted to ask brother son when I can go home. I've been here for 3 months. Why can't I go down the mountain? I want brother son to bring me along when he goes down the mountain next time. You can eat your fill and wear warm clothes on this mountain, but there isn't even a place to buy things." The person at the side snorted. "You still want to go home? Don't you want to?" The person laughed again and shook his head. He ignored Qin Shu and turned to leave. Qin Shu stared at his back view absent-mindedly. Why did the guy leave before he finished speaking? Just as he was thinking about this, someone called him. He hurriedly carried his cloth bag and followed the person. Their conversation wasn't loud, but it still entered the ears of Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan clearly in the silent forest. Based on what Qin Shu said, he has only been here for 3 months. He doesn't know what these people do, Gu Yundong said softly. However, she heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. Shao Qingyuan nodded. Lure him over secretly later and ask him for the reason. The two of them waited quietly. The things in the carts were all moved in. Brother Sun ordered 2 people to pull the carriages down the mountain, and went in himself. Qin Shu was the last to come out. He seemed to be guarding the forest here. He stood with another person and observed his surroundings at all times. Qin Shu was honest. He really stood there, and did his job carefully. As for the other person, he sat on the rock for some time before he rolled his eyes. He used the excuse of having a stomachache to leave and never returned again. But this was convenient for Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan. Shao Qingyuan squatted down and found a small rock. He shook it and threw it on Qin Shu's back. Ooh. Source. Com. Updated by Novlove. Com if you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1185. Brainwashed. Qin Shu immediately turned his head vigilantly. He was holding a bamboo whistle in his hand, as if he would blow it the next moment. However, when he turned around he saw two familiar figures. His eyes lit up and he was about to speak. Gu Yundong immediately raised her forefinger and shushed him. Qin Shu was stunned. When he saw Gu Yundong waving at him, he smiled and ran over. Sister Gu, why are y'all here? Gu Yundong immediately pulled him a few steps away. Then, she frowned and looked at him. I also want to ask you, why didn't you stay in Qingyuan village? Why did you come to the mountains? Qin Shu scratched his head and sighed. I want to see the world and see what it's like outside. Sister Gu told me many things in the past, and I want to see it with my own eyes. That's why I came out. I want to find a job and earn money myself. After I earn a lot of money in the future, I will go back and build a road leading to Qingyuan village. That way, it will be easier for the village head and the others to come out. Gu Yundong choked. If she knew this was going to happen, she wouldn't have said so much to him. Look, she managed to lure him out. Although Qin Shu's intention was good, he had been protected too well in Qingyuan village. He was already 14 years old, but he was still young. He didn't know that there were so many bad people outside, and there was no one protecting him. Does your village head know that you came out? Qin Shu shrunk his neck. Gu Yundong immediately understood. As expected, if village chief Qin knew about this, he wouldn't feel at ease letting him travel alone. He might be scolding her in his heart. Then why are you here? Qin Shu hurriedly said. I met brother's son in the neighboring county city. He was busy moving the goods, so I went to help him. I even asked him if he needed manpower. I wanted to find a job. I didn't need a lot of salary as long as I'm provided with food and lodging. A little money is enough. Brother's son promised me when he saw how hardworking I am. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan felt the corners of their lips twitching. Move the goods? Look at how hardworking you are. Did brother's son take you away because he was worried that you would spout nonsense after seeing what happened between them? Did he plan to silence you? In the end, he realized that this fellow was naive and easy to fool, so he decided to let him be a coolie in the mountain? As expected, Qin Shu continued. Unfortunately, brother's son brought me up the mountain. They said that there's a lack of manpower here. The boss goods are on the mountain, so we need to help him with his business. He's worried that someone will steal his goods, so they need young people like us. The people in the mountain are not bad. They are very hardworking. They even said that we are a family and will help each other in the future. When I become successful, I can go back to the village and bring my uncle and auntie over. The salary here is high. I received 3 taels of silver the first month. However, I haven't got my salary for last month. I will have to wait for half a year before the money is given to me. Gu Yundong. Damn, isn't this pyramid scheme brainwashing? Did they know that Qin Shu was easy to fool because he didn't know the market price? This stupid young man. Gu Yundong couldn't help but hit him hard. What should I say? You didn't know that you got tricked, but you still think that he's a good person? Qin Shu was stunned. I got tricked? How is that possible? They gave me my salary. It's just a few taels of salary. You worked for him for 3 months for nothing. Gu Yundong couldn't help but feel fortunate. If they didn't come, Qin Shu might continue to be fooled. If this bunch of people were really plotting a rebellion, Qin Shu, who would become their partner in the future, would only have one ending. Source. Com. Updated by Novlove. Com if you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1186. Stay. This was the first time this young man came out of Qingyuan village. He was filled with longing and yearning for the outside world. He wanted to come out and take a look, but in the end, He stepped into an abyss of eternal damnation. How poor was he? Gu Yundong tapped his head. These aren't good people. They gave you a month's salary because they wanted to hold you back. Gu Yundong treated Qin Shu as her younger brother. Hence, she patiently explained what this bunch of people were. Shao Qingyuan was staring into the distance. Fortunately, the other guard never came back. After Gu Yundong briefly explained what happened, Qin Shu was stunned. He widened his eyes in disbelief. His legs started to turn weak. Sister Gu, are you saying that these people, there are good people and bad people outside? You shouldn't have come here alone. Humans are unpredictable. A person who treats you well one moment might stab you in the back the next. Gu Yundong sighed. It's my fault. I shouldn't have told you about the beautiful things outside. Qin Shu shook his head. No, it's not Sister Gu's fault. I'm too eager to come out and take a look. His father died a long time ago and his mother remarried and left Qingyuan village. He wanted to know how good the outside world was for his mother to abandon him and run out to marry someone else. All right, before they discover you, they'll bring you away. The village head must be worried about your safety. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan exchanged glances with each other. Then they pulled Qin Shu, who was still in a daze, down the mountain carefully. Unexpectedly, after taking a few steps, Qin Shu suddenly stopped. No, I can't leave. Gu Yundong frowned. Why? Sister Gu, if what you said is true, Brother Sun and the others are all bad people. If I leave, they will know that I saw through their disguise. What if I go to Qingyuan village and harm the village head? Gu Yundong was stunned. She looked at him in surprise. She didn't expect him to think of this. Qin Shu. He was naive but he wasn't stupid. However, he was right. Brother Sun must have asked around about Qin Shu's hometown. If Qin Shu disappeared, Qingyuan village might be targeted. But she couldn't allow Qin Shu to continue staying here. Sister Gu, I want to stay. Since you and Brother Shao know their true faces, you can report to the authorities and ask them to catch them. That way, if I leave, Qingyuan village will be fine, right? Yes. But, since I know that they are bad people, I will be careful. Don't worry, I might be able to help. I'm truly worried. Gu Yundong was in a dilemma. On the other hand, Shao Qingyuan took a few more glances at Qin Shu and said, All right, you can stay. Gu Yundong looked at him in surprise. Shao Qingyuan said, Qin Shu knows the severity of the matter. Even if it's for Qingyuan village, he won't expose himself to danger, right? Qin Shu nodded his head fervently. He immediately felt that he had a huge responsibility. That's right, he didn't just need to protect himself. He needed to protect the villagers of Qingyuan village too. If he was exposed, all the people in Qingyuan village would be harmed. Gu Yundong glanced around him and hesitated for a moment. In the end she nodded. All right, stay here. Be careful. After everything here is settled, I will bring you to see the real world. At that time, you will be able to earn more money and build roads for Qingyuan village. Source: Com, updated by Novlove. Com if you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1187. Uncle is getting married. Qin Shu smiled widely. Alright, it's decided then. It's a deal. Gu Yundong nodded. After a pause, she told Qin Shu some things and even gave him some stuff. Of course, she also asked Qin Shu about the situations inside. Although Qin Shu was an outermost guard, he knew quite a lot. Most importantly, it was because he seemed naive and sincere. He loved to ask others about the outside world. Other people would want to boast when they saw him asking for knowledge like an ignorant country bumpkin. It was easy for them to expose themselves when they boasted. Qin Shu was young, so he had a good memory. Thus he told Gu Yundong everything he knew. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan really received a lot of useful information. Before she left, she told Qin Shu, continue to use this attitude. Pretend that you haven't seen us today. We will contact you again. Remember, nothing is more important than staying alive. If necessary, you can betray us. Qin Shu widened his eyes in shock. How can I do that? I don't want to. Shao Qingyuan said. You don't know much anyway. Qin Shu. Gu Yundong laughed. You don't have to tell the whole truth. You can fool them by telling them part of the truth. I understand. Gu Yundong was worried about him, so she reminded him a few more times. However, it was getting late, so she had to leave. Qin Shu looked at their backs from afar. The corners of his lips were tightly pressed together. He only went back to his original spot to resume his job unwillingly after they disappeared. However, he was still satisfied when he saw Sister Gu and Brother Shao today. He couldn't repay Sister Gu for giving them so much food and cloth. This time he would definitely be able to do it. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan didn't waste any time after they went down the mountain. They quickly jumped on their horses and rushed back to Fengkai County. When they reached the county city, it was already the afternoon of the second day. The two of them went straight to Qin Wensheng's school. At this moment, Qin Wenzheng was still teaching the students, while Yinshu and Yuanji were studying in the classroom. Madame Gu entertained Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan. She hurriedly called Qin Wenzheng over when she heard that they had something urgent. Gu Yundong quickly explained what happened. Qin Wenzheng was elated when he heard this. So the Zhang family is helping the Tao family? Yes. Gu Yundong nodded. She told him about Tao Yan's visit. Qin Wenzheng squinted slightly. He tapped his fingers lightly on the table and said, I understand. Send me the address of that small courtyard. I will ask someone to take a look at the basement later. As for those people in the mountains, don't worry. I will send someone to investigate again. Give me Qin Shu's portrait. I will ask someone to protect him secretly. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief when she heard this. She stood up and quickly drew Qin Shu's face. She also drew Brother Sun's appearance along the way. She would leave the rest to Qin Wenzheng. He promised to protect Qin Shu, so he wouldn't let anything happen to him. Qin Wenzheng turned around and ordered his men to do some things. Gu Yundong saw that it was almost time to leave school, so she decided to wait. She would go back with Yinshu and Yuanji. Yinshu knew that her elder sister was here, so she ran over happily. Sister, you're finally back. Tomorrow is Uncle's wedding day. If you don't come back, you won't be able to make it. Gu Yundong was shocked. She counted the days and slapped her forehead. Yes. Tomorrow was the big day. She almost couldn't rush back. Source: Com, updated by Novlove. Com if you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1188. Confession. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan hurriedly left the school with the two little kids. They went to Dongyi Academy to fetch the Niu Dan brothers before rushing back to Yongfu village. As expected, the moment she entered the village, she saw Gu Xiaoxi's newly built house with the word happiness pasted in red. There were also red lanterns hanging in front of the door. The entire house gave off a happy vibe. It was the same for the Gu family. Tomorrow was the big day, so there were busy people everywhere. Eldest Aunt Gu stood at the door and gave instructions. Why isn't there a red cloth covering the wine jar? Shuetao, is the red cloth with you? And that chair, who's in charge of the red cushions? Oh my memory, a euro. As she spoke, she turned around and saw Gu Yundong and the others. She was elated and ran over. Yundong, Qingyuan, are you finally back? Eldest aunt. Gu Yundong alighted the carriage. Sorry to make you worry. Of course I was worried. If Qingyuan didn't say that you were busy with business, your uncle wouldn't have the heart to get married. Eldest Aunt Gu patted her. Oh right, your father came back yesterday too. He's inside. They walked in as they spoke. As expected, Gu Dajiang was standing in the central room. He was looking at a list in his hand, but he was frowning. He raised his head abruptly when he heard the commotion. The worry in his eyes subsided a little when he saw Gu Yundong. After a pause, he said to Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan, follow me. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan exchanged glances with each other and followed Gu Dajiang into the study. Tell me what happened. The moment the door closed, Gu Dajiang raised his head and looked at them with a stern expression. I asked Shuetao, and she said that you followed a middle-aged man and never came back. I went to look for Master Qin later, and he said that you were helping him on a task, and it's nothing serious. What's the matter? Gu Yundong was stunned. Gu Dajiang had just reached home yesterday afternoon. The moment he came back, he asked Tang Shuitao and then he went to look for Qin Wenjing again. He must be extremely anxious. However, Qin Wenjing didn't tell them about this. He didn't know where she went either. He probably told Gu Dajiang a lie to comfort him. He must have sent someone to look for her and brother Shao. Gu Yundong felt warm in her heart. She walked to Gu Dajiang's side and held his arm. She smiled and said, "Dad, you're the best." Gu Dajiang couldn't maintain the stern expression on his face anymore. He pushed her head and said, "Tell me quickly." Gu Yundong coughed lightly. She didn't plan to hide it from Gu Dajiang. Her father was going to take the imperial exam. This was something he should know. The things he met in the future might be even more troublesome and serious. He should be mentally prepared. What's more, after these 2 years of experience, his father was no longer the ordinary villager who was suppressed by leader Gu and the others in the Gu village. Thus, she told him the entire story of the Tao and Zhang families. Gu Dajiang was stunned when he heard it. This was such a serious matter? He didn't know what to say for a long time. After some time, he finally digested all the information. He patted Gu Yundong's shoulder and said, "You did well. This kind of treasonous and rebellious person who tried to destroy the peace of our country should be eradicated as soon as possible." He paused for a moment before frowning. However, Qingyuan is right. You can't take the risk alone the next time something like this happens. Source: Com. Updated by Novlove. Com. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1189. It wasn't instigated by Sister Gu Yundong immediately agreed. She promised that if this happened again, she wouldn't rush forward alone. Gu Dajiang looked at her. He wanted to say something, but he remembered that his daughter was getting more and more capable. She knew more things than he did, so he felt a little dejected. In the end, he left without saying anything. Gu Yundong was stunned when she saw him leaving. She asked Shao Qingyuan in confusion, "What happened to my father?" "He knows that you're fine, so he's going to prepare for younger uncle's wedding," Shao Qingyuan said firmly. Gu Yundong felt that it made sense. "Let's go and help too." That night, the Gu family worked very late. They were afraid that they would miss something during tomorrow's banquet. Gu Xiaoxi was so excited that she didn't sleep the entire night. She paced back and forth in her new house alone. She held the oil lamp in her hand and inspected the front and back of the house. Chang Yaya got married from the Gu family. She was pregnant so others could take good care of her in the Gu family. Thus, early in the morning, Chang Yaya dressed up at the Gu residence. She had just changed her clothes and put on her makeup when the sound of the groom came from outside. Gu Xiaoxi had only been in Yongfu village for a month, but he had a good personality and was young and energetic. He had a good relationship with the villagers. This time, not only did he bring Shao Qingyuan along, but he also brought Lu Wei, who loved to join in the fun, and the other 2 young men from the village. It was quite lively. Yin Shu and the other children were blocking the door with Tang Shuitao, Shuirong, and a few others. No one knew which side they were on, but they were extremely excited. They only opened the door after grabbing all the red packets in their hands. When Gu Xiaoxi came in, he pulled Yunshi's hair forcefully. "I'll settle the score with you later." Fortunately, he brought a group of people with him. In the end, the ones blocking the door were some children. No matter how good they were, it was useless. They couldn't push the door with force either. What if they hurt the children? Yunshu took the red packets happily and snorted. "I won't tell you that someone instigated this." Gu Yundong, who was standing not far away and watching the show, "Come over here. I promise I won't beat you to death." As expected, when Gu Xiaoxi heard this sentence, he shifted his gaze to her. Gu Yundong looked up at the sky. "The weather is not bad today. It's a suitable day to get married. Little uncle, you will definitely be able to live a happy life with little aunt in the future." Gu Xiaoxi pointed at her from afar. "Don't forget that you're getting married in August." Shao Qingyuan, who was standing behind him, asked, "Little uncle, are you making things difficult for me? Will you block the door for me?" That's right, he was the one fetching the bride, not his irritating niece. Lu Wei laughed loudly behind them. He hurriedly pushed Gu Xiaoxi forward and said, Let's go and fetch the bride first. Gu Xiaoxi threw everything to the back of her mind and ran to Chang Yaya's room in a hurry. Chang Yaya was wearing a red wedding gown with a red veil covering her head. No one could see what she looked like. However, her hands on her knees were clenched tightly. She was extremely nervous too. Gu Xiaoxi was already standing at the door. He stopped in his tracks instantly and scratched his head as he laughed awkwardly. The other people were elated. The matchmaker even shook her handkerchief and said happily, "The groom is shy." "I think so too." Everyone in the room laughed. He only regained his senses after Gu Dafeng pushed him. He squatted down and carried Chang Yaya on his back. Source: Com, updated by Novlove. Com. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible.